Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Welcome into a Monday edition of the Sports Bash Live. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. What's up, everybody? Rough weekend for the Phils down in Baltimore. We'll talk more about it. Trey Turner expected to return to the lineup tonight. Waiting to hear that news come out from the Phillies today, and the big news will be who goes down when Turner comes up. We're on that here in just a few. We've got the dates for Eagles training camp. Yes, Eagles training camp. When will they report? We have that date. Also, Eagles regular season single game tickets go on sale tomorrow. Doesn't it feel like the summer hasn't even started, and yet the football season is almost an arm length away? Joel Embiid was talking last night. You'll hear what he had to say. Paul Hudrick tonight at 5 o'clock on the eve of what could be, actually not the eve. Tonight could be the final night of the NBA. If Boston wins, the season is over, and teams can start signing their own free agents starting tomorrow if the Celtics close out tonight, which means we could have basketball news. We know that the NBA draft is just, 2 weeks away. The 26th is when the NBA draft is. Actually, the draft is a 2-day event this year, if you did not know that. The first round, it's kind of weird. The first round is on Wednesday in prime time. The second round is on Thursday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the NBA draft. So we've got a lot happening on this Monday, and we like you to get involved as always. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Mike McGarry will be here at the bottom of the hour. Bob Wankel, as he does every Monday, joins us to kind of look back at the Phillies weekend. And by 3 o'clock, we could know the news that we are expecting to hear, which is Trey Turner is up and who is down. Well, some people are hinting that the guy going down could be Johan Rojas. It does make some sense. We'll get into that. But I do want to look back at the weekend that was, quite frankly, disastrous in terms of wins and losses. We did say on Friday's show that we were just trying to find and hope that the Phillies could find one game to win down in Baltimore. I didn't expect them to win the series. Friday night was a long night, extra innings, rain delay. But they scratched and clawed and found a way to win a game in Baltimore, which is kind of what I asked. I said, can you get me one? Can you get me one game in Baltimore? That's a really good Orioles team. In fact, I think it's the best team in the American League, maybe the best team in all of baseball when it's all said and done. And the Phillies have been meh recently, right? I think the London games, coupled with a couple of road trips, back-to-back, the schedule makers didn't do the Phillies any favors, putting them in London and then having them go on the road. Now, people are talking about, hey, the Mets have played well since they left London. The Mets also went home. They did not have to travel to San Diego to go play the Padres. They didn't have to go to Miami. Now, listen, it is what it is. The schedule is what it is. You got to kind of navigate your way through it. The Phillies going from London to Boston to Baltimore, not ideal. Coming home now against the Padres. It's time to start picking this thing back up, and they should get a shot in the arm tonight with Trey Turner back in the lineup. And I would imagine Turner will be back in the lineup hitting in the number 2 hole, which means that Nick Castellanos will most likely go back somewhere. I would imagine either 5 or 6, somewhere in there. But, Turner back. Could Rojas be going to the minors? That's kind of been the big conversation, is who is the guy that goes to the minors? And it's really, quite frankly, only Rojas at this point. So we'll get into that coming up in just a little bit. But I do want to look back, Friday night. I feel like the Phillies, it was bound to happen. And, of course, they play Baltimore. It's a really good team. They get that win on Friday night. They kind of grind that thing out in extra innings. But the Saturday game, Taijuan Walker pitches a pretty good game for you, actually. It's the second time in a row where Walker kind of gave you a, winnable game, and you couldn't get the job done. Walker gets into the 6th inning, and he only gives up the 3 runs, but the Ruiz innings were disastrous later in the game. But they just couldn't get the offense going. The only guy who really seemingly has hit this whole weekend was Alec Bohm, which was good to see because Bohm was kind of struggling along, and now he's up over 300 after the weekend that he had. But it was good to see Bohm kind of snap out of this little funk that he's been in. But the other guy who's really been struggling is Bryson Stott. They got to kind of figure out what to do with him. And I think a lot of this is, too, when you look at the lineup, it's been all over the place because of the Turner injury. And then the Real Muto injury, coupled with the Marsh injury. Those 3 injuries have guys kind of moving all over the place, and Stott has not benefited from the situation here. But I think the last straw for Rojas possibly going to the minors is the game on Friday night when he made that mistake, pinch running. He gets thrown out at the plate. His defense has just been, it's been very good, but it hasn't been elite. He's definitely a very good center fielder, but he hasn't been elite center field this year like he was last year. People forget when he got called up last year, it was not only the fact that he hit over 300. He had like a 340 on base percentage, but he was an elite defensive player. That's why he was up here in the first place. The fact that he hit kept him here. This year they were hoping that he could handle himself at the plate and play elite defense. Here's the problem. He has, I don't want to say handled himself at the plate, but he's been more productive than some of the other guys out there, sadly. I mean, his batting average is higher than, say, Whit Merrifield, but that's not productive enough. He's hitting .235, but his defense has just been very good and not elite. And very good wasn't the plan. To keep him up here, he has to be elite. He has to be the Gold Glove center fielder at the end of the year. They have to say he is so far and away the best defensive player out in center field that we have to give him the Gold Glove. And that hasn't been the case with Johan Rojas. So, listen, as much as I like Rojas, I agree that he's probably the guy that has to go down because I don't think losing him is preventing you from winning games. Now, I will say this. You send him down, and now Marsh and Pache become a kind of platoon in center field, and then Merrifield and Dahl, you have 2 platoons essentially going in left field and in center field. I think you're taking a step back defensively in left field because Marsh is a pretty good left fielder. And now he's moving back over to center field, so you're taking a hit in center field defensively because Rojas is better than Marsh is in center field. And now because Marsh is moving from left to center, you're lesser in center, and now you're lesser in left field. So keep in mind, with this Phillies pitching staff, one of the positives has been their outfield defense has been much better than it was last year. You remember last year, they had Schwarber out there playing left field, and that wasn't ideal. When you had Rojas and Marsh playing center and left, you had pretty, plus defenders out there. Well, now you've got Marsh moving back to center field. And look, this isn't all official. We'll be continuing to look at it. But I definitely think that defense has to be something to keep an eye on. So Rojas did not have a great weekend. He got thrown out at the plate and will likely be sent to the minors probably within the next hour here. Brandon Marsh will probably be your center fielder. We also saw yesterday Rob Thompson get ejected. Thompson gets ejected from the game yesterday. He blows a lid. And I think it was just one of those situations where he had enough. Like everything, we're on the road, we're sleeping in a hotel. I'm done with this. And he just blew his top yesterday. And he wasn't in the wrong. I mean, the genesis of this is Stubbs appeared. This is interesting, okay? Stubbs, after the game, said that he got hit in the foot. Now, he stuck with that story after the game, that he got hit in the foot. The video does not look like he got hit in the foot. The ball looked like it bounced ahead of his foot. So I don't know if Stubbs is sticking to the story or what. But Thompson comes out, and he is arguing. So Stubbs said after the game that the Orioles were saying that Stubbs' foot was out of the batter's box, and that's what they were arguing, not whether the ball hit him or not. So the Phillies were contending that the Orioles should have had to challenge this. So the home plate umpire said, Stubbs, you get first base, you got hit in the foot. The first base umpire said, no. He didn't get hit in the foot. Well, Thompson says, how the heck could you see if he got hit in the foot or not from way out where you were playing, umpiring from, about 110 feet away? And he has a point. The home plate umpire said it hit him in the foot. The first base umpire overrules the home plate umpire who's standing right there. So Topper comes out and he says, why are you overruling him? How could you? It's like an NBA guy who makes a call from half court on a play underneath the basket when the guy's on the end line and he's standing right there and he doesn't make the call. You're like, how do you miss that call, but the guy at half court makes it? So this is essentially what happens yesterday. Now, I think one of the things Topper was arguing was, why should I have to challenge? Why do I have to use my challenge? They should have to use their challenge. So it was just a whole mess. And I think Topper just said, you know what? This trip has gone lousy. I've been out of my bed. I was in London. I bought the whole bar beers. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to end this chapter of this. You know, when you're on vacation and you're going through like multiple countries, at some point you're just like, I'm done with this, right? As much fun as I've had, as much as I've loved this trip, I'm ready to go home and get in my own bed. I felt like that was the Phillies somewhere around Saturday afternoon, right? At Saturday afternoon, they were like, this trip could have been cut short by one day. You know, like when I go to Clearwater, we go Tuesday to Tuesday generally. By Monday, we're like, you know what? We probably should have left today, you know, because Tuesday, you're down there and all you're doing is waiting to go to the airport. You're out of gas, you have nothing left to give, and you're paying basically just to stay down there for one more day so that you can go to the airport. I feel like that's where the Phillies were. They were just out of gas and like, get me off this trip. Now, they probably should have had the day off today. My God, the schedule makers just did not do this team any favors. Yes, they're getting to go home, but you're playing again today. But you should get Trey Turner back. And that should be a boost for this team because they really need a top-of-the-order hitter. Nick Castellanos, whoever decided to put him in the two-hole, I mean, that's malpractice. Come on. Castellanos hitting in the two-hole is atrocious. 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts on Saturday, and he followed that up by being lousy again yesterday. So what was that? 0 for 4 on Saturday, 0 for 5, I think he went yesterday. And, he was 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. I mean, who in their right mind said, I got a great idea. Let's stick. Now, I know they're handcuffed by some extent because you'd like to hit Stott there probably, but he's left-handed. Why not hit Sosa there? You know, at least you have Sosa in the two-hole, a guy who's a little bit more contact-oriented. Castellanos has been a disaster. And, you know, it seemed like he was coming around a bit. He's not coming around. His approach is god-awful. He should be embarrassed with some of the approach he comes with. The whole stadium can see a spinner's coming, and he continues to throw his ass out and one hand. I mean, it's embarrassing, some of his at-bats at this point. And for them to continue to masquerade him in the 2 spot, while I know Turner, they didn't have a lot of options here, but come on, really? What'd you do, throw darts up and say whoever the dart hits in the face, that's the guy who's going to hit in the 2-hole until Turner comes back? I get it. It's the third 2 guy since Turner went out that JT went out. I'm watching the Friday night play, by the way, of Kerkering throwing the ball off the brick backstop, the ball hitting the sign, ricocheting back to Marchand, and Mullins beating the tag. And I'm thinking, how the heck did Marchand not tag him out? I mean, what in the world? He like stumbled or something. I was like, how did that guy beat you there? I mean, he looked like he was dead to rights, and he somehow missed him. So that was another thing from Friday. The rain delay. Did you stay up for the rain delay?
Yep, I stayed up, Mike. I was committed at that point.
Yeah, we were watching the game out on my porch.
So did you move it inside at that point?
Well, we watched the game out there, and we pretty much stayed outside through the rain delay.
Okay.
And then went inside to watch, because my girlfriend said, all right, I can't stay up anymore. Because by the time the game restarted, it was almost like 11:30.
Yeah, it was like around 11:30 when it restarted.
But we did stay outside and watch like the Taryn Hatcher, Bryson Stott with the baby, all that stuff. But all of the Phillies clubhouse stuff that they put on.
Oh, I muted all that.
We were outside having a couple happy hour Fridays. You know what I mean?
No offense to Bryson Stott. I just didn't care that much about him and his wife and his baby.
Well, they had other things, too. There was the thing with Chase Utley.
I know she's with Chase Utley. Yeah. I saw that out of the corner of my eye. I was like, let me see what's going on with the NBA Finals right now.
Yeah.
At that point.
By the way, Flyers preseason schedule just came out. You getting fired up?
I'm interested.
Yeah?
I'm not fired up yet.
September 22nd. Mark your calendars, 3 o'clock. It's a Sunday. Now, they're putting a game on a Sunday at 3 o'clock up against the Eagles.
That's poor.
It's a preseason game, but,
Still poor. You could have done it Saturday. Why not? If you told me it was Saturday at 3 o'clock, I think you might have gotten a little more juice to it.
It's a preseason opener. Sunday at Washington. I can't believe
no one's going to pay attention to that.
About Flyers hockey right now.
I'll wait for the Flyers.
Well, it's funny. I bring this up. So many people I know went to Baltimore. I did not go to Baltimore.
They were talking about on the broadcast how, it was like the Phillies took over the stadium. Philly fans.
I made an executive decision at the last minute that I was not going to go to Baltimore. You know how much I love Baltimore.
You love Baltimore.
And I haven't been to Camden Yards in a while, so I would have loved to gone to Camden Yards. I just had too much stuff to do.
Life comes at you fast.
Yeah,
Mike.
I just had a lot of stuff happening this weekend and this week coming up. My girlfriend's son's graduating from high school, so we're getting the whole house ready.
Congrats
the families are coming into town, all that stuff. So I decided not to go, and we were watching the game Saturday, and I said, my gosh, it had to be hot out there. And then I know a bunch of people from here. There was a big old bus trip from this area that went down there on Sunday.
Yep.
And, the Phillies fans just loaded that place up. It was a great atmosphere all weekend long.
It's funny because some of the online clips I saw of people traveling down to Baltimore this weekend, it reminded me of the episode of Welcome to Wrexham where they talk about how the Wrexham fans load into the bus for a Tuesday night game that's almost 3 hours away and then get back on the bus around midnight to head back home. And they're like, I don't know how I'm going to get up for work tomorrow, but here we go. That's what the Philly fans remind me of. It's like they all got on that bus Sunday for that afternoon game. They rode all the way back and they're back at work today pumping in the caffeine.
Well, we're keeping our eye on the Phillies move, which we're anticipating will be Trey Turner activated and likely Johan Rojas getting sent to the minors. So when that happens, we'll let you know.
And just let folks know, part of the reason why we're also keeping an eye on this is because the one thing they have announced today, Mike, is that the clubhouse is open to the media at 2:55, and Rob Thompson will be available at 3:45. So I'm assuming we're going to get this news any minute.
About, 25 minutes?
Yeah, we got 30 minutes until the clubhouse opens to the media.
All right. Well, listen, I think that's what's going to happen. The weekend was Wheeler did not have it yesterday. He was not sharp. Nola was not sharp.
Yeah.
Walker was probably the best of the group.
Which sounds insane, but that's what happened.
Yeah. All right. We start kind of there. There's a couple other things that Castellanos was terrible. I brought that up. Bohm got kind of going. Harper had a decent weekend. He hit, but Stott's another guy. I see people kind of starting to pile on Stott a little bit here. And your boy Dahl's down to 230.
Yep, he's stinking up the joint now.
I tried to caution everybody.
You did. I wouldn't listen.
Not get too excited about Dahl, but I would
got
imagine,
excited. I saw 2 home runs, you know?
Well, I would imagine that Dahl is now going to be, I mean, he's going to be your Jake Cave, like where he's going to be playing against right-handed pitching a lot. I mean, he's going to be getting a lot of playing time.
Unless he's the one who gets optioned down.
The problem with that is, I think the Phillies actually like Dahl having him in the organization, and they can't option him or Pache because if they do, somebody can pick him up. They're out of options. So I think the Phillies will try to keep Pache and Dahl around until they have to make another move or decision on what they want to do here. And I guess, look, can you send Rojas to the minors and try to get him regular at bats to see if that can get him kind of jump started,
yeah. And then maybe you kind of like maybe you look at a guy like Pache and say, can we move this guy at the deadline for something? And then call Rojas back up?
Well, I'll tell you what. Rojas, Pache, Dahl, none of them are going to help this team with runners in scoring position. 8 for 36. You would think Trey Turner can fix that. I mean, he was having a great start to the season, 343. But they need that guy at the top of the lineup. That number 2 spot, especially with JT being out, has really, been an albatross the last week with JT Realmuto. I mean, Castellanos is giving you nothing. So getting Turner there at least now lengthens that lineup a little bit here, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? I got to assume that nobody expected the offense to fall off the way it has without JT. I think we all were more worried about him defensively than offensively, but we're starting to see that maybe he was way more valuable. Maybe he was like the guy who was kind of keeping you afloat. And now you're hoping Turner comes in and puts a little stickum in that hole in the boat.
Well, they need it. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. Any concerns about what you're seeing from the Phillies? Are you like, hey, it was one of those weekends, a good team, the team's been on the road. How are you kind of evaluating this Phillies team as they come back home? Trey Turner should be back tonight as they take on the Padres. Phillies, Padres, Citizens Bank Park, back at home after a long, the last time they were at home was against the Brewers, back when Rhys Hoskins was here. That's how long it has been since the Phillies were at the bank. That was going all the way back, keep that in mind, to June 5th was the last time the Phillies were at home. It is now June 17th. So it's been quite a while since the Phillies have been at Citizens Bank Park. It's Christopher Sanchez tonight getting the start for the Phils. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressafac.com, set to join us on the other side with a look back at the weekend. Any concerns for Mike losing to Baltimore, the way they lost to the Red Sox in that series, getting Trey Turner back? Will that jumpstart some things? And does he think it's Johan Rojas that will and should get sent to the minors? That's all coming up here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. Just search SB Live.
It's this Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:30 on a Monday. Rough weekend for the Phils down in Baltimore, but any reason to be concerned? They should get Trey Turner back. We'll talk to Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressafac.com, on what was a kind of an ugly weekend. You wonder if everything just kind of caught up to this team. I likened it, Mike, to you go on vacation, and that last day or two, you're like, I probably could have gone home a day or two early. It's like, it's great backpacking across Europe, but at some point you're ready for your bed. It feels like the Phillies just backpacked across Europe a little bit too long, and we're ready to come home.
Yeah, well, look at it, Mike. London, Boston, Baltimore road trip is a tough one, and maybe we should have seen this end coming because I think they just kind of ran out of gas on Saturday and Sunday. Now, they don't have, 3-game series with the Padres starting tonight, but I think, if a team needed an off day, the Phillies look like on Saturday and Sunday like they need an off day, but they won't get one until Thursday of this week.
Yeah, no, it's still. I said the schedule makers didn't do them a lot of favors, but hey, you got to figure out ways and find ways. They could get some help tonight, Mike, and that's with Trey Turner. It sounds like he's going to come back. Rob Thompson said yesterday that they anticipate him being active for tonight. What will he add to what this team is? Now, look, they were pretty good without him. I think 25-13. They actually expanded their lead without him. But what should he bring back to this team?
Well, remember when he went out with the hamstring injury, he was off to a possible MVP-type start. And I know Edmundo Sosa has filled in and done tremendously, but he's still Trey Turner. He's still one of the best players in baseball. There'll be a presence in that lineup. I assume he'll be in the 2-hole tonight. And especially when you got guys like JT Realmuto out and Brandon Marsh kind of feeling his way back into the lineup, it's good to see the Phillies get a little bit whole tonight. So, yeah, getting Trey Turner back, you're adding one of the best players in baseball, and that's good enough to give any team a boost.
All right, Mike, let's talk about Sosa. What happens with him now? Does he just kind of, go to a minor role, or do you think they need to try to figure out more ways to get him involved?
Well, I think you got to figure out a way to get him 15 to 20 at-bats a week. I'm not going to go crazy with Edmundo Sosa. I know he's coming off an excellent stretch. I know people are like, put him in the outfield, put him here, put him there. First of all, Trey Turner is going to ease back into it. I would assume that Trey Turner is probably going to play Monday and Tuesday, and then, boom, I would expect him to have the day game on Wednesday off, Sosa to be back in there. Maybe you can give Bryson Stott a little bit of a rest at second base, but I'm not going to get carried away with Edmundo Sosa. He's had these stretches in his career that have caused people, both with the Phillies and the Cardinals, to say, hey, this guy could be an everyday guy. And then when he makes the transition to being an everyday guy, he doesn't quite, perform up to those standards. So, look, I'm going to look to get him 15 at-bats a week. But I'm not going to go crazy based on what he did, as impressive as it was with Turner out of the lineup.
All right, Stott's an interesting guy because he's a pretty popular guy, so he doesn't get criticized all that much. But any worries that Stott isn't performing?
Worried a little bit, disappointed in his season so far this year. Absolutely. I don't think he's had a good season at all. I expected much more of him coming into the season. As he started off slow. Then he was okay for a while. The last 2 to 3 weeks, he's been terrible. I'm not going to give up on Bryson Stott. I still think he's got a great future. But am I disappointed with the way he's played so far this season? Absolutely.
Mike, obviously Turner up. Someone's got to go. A lot of signs pointing to Rojas. Is he the right guy to get shipped out?
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to be the guy. We're going to find that out in the next half hour or so when the Phillies clubhouse opens. Right before the clubhouse opens, they'll probably send out a release activating Turner and telling you who they sent down. All signs pointed to Rojas. We talked about it on Friday. Mike, he's hitting okay, but the defense just isn't there. I know the metrics of the defense isn't there, but my own eyeballs this year, seeing the Phillies play several times, he's not having the defensive year that he had last year when he came up and caught everything. In many ways, he's been kind of shaky out there a little bit in center field. So if the defense is not going to be A+, then you really can't overlook his hitting limitations. And plus, he's the guy with options. He's the guy you can send down without any fear of losing. So he appears to be the odd man out when they make the Turner move official.
Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. Right, and then it looks like you got a Merrifield Dahl platoon in left field and a Marsh Pache platoon in center field. Is that good enough?
We'll see. I mean, I think everybody looks at the Phillies outfield and says, hey, we need another right-handed power bat. That's one of the two needs that everybody points to. The other is a reliever, right-handed reliever in the bullpen. But I think, Mike, you got to give on June 17th here, trade deadline's July 31st or August 1st, whatever it is. We got to find out about Merrifield, right? So you got to play him in the platoon with Dahl. Let's see if Merrifield can hit. Let's see what Pache can do, and then let's assess in 2 to 3 weeks exactly what the Phillies need to go get at the trade deadline. But I think, you got to find out if Merrifield is going to fire this season, if he's going to have a year you thought he would have when you sign him in the off season, and you might as well find out about Pache too. What can he do being a regular contributor? And send Rojas down, get him consistent at bats there, get him to work on the defense and the hitting. So yeah, to me, it's almost like this might be a trial here for Merrifield and Pache to see exactly what do the Phillies have in them, and are they worth keeping, or do you have to make a move at the deadline, and how big does that move have to be?
Is there a threshold for the Phillies on Castellanos?
I think you got to just play him out there. I mean, he's getting $20 million a year. There's certainly no one on the roster now that I'm going to point to and say, play this guy over Castellanos on a regular basis. Does that change maybe if there's a trade? But, I mean, he's just one of your guys. He's one of the guys that the club is built around. And if he doesn't come out of it or doesn't perform more consistently, you're just not going to be as good. But you've made a bet with Castellanos, and I think in a lot of ways you got to live with the results.
Yeah, I mean, hitting him in the 2-hole didn't do him any favors. He was abysmal this weekend. Maybe moving him back down to, in the middle of that lineup. But, man, you wonder if you can maximize your ceiling with him slugging along at 208.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to need him to be better than he's been most of the time here in Philadelphia. You really think about it, it was the first half of last season and then 2 weeks in the postseason where he was good. Other than that, he has really struggled here. So he might be coming to the end of the line at some point. But right now, I just think you've got to live with him, put him out there, and hope that he hits the ball like you thought he was going to hit, or like he hit the first half of last season when he was an all-star.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, PressOfAC.com. A look back at the Phillies weekend down in Baltimore. They lose 2 out of 3. They were lucky to get the Friday night one, too. So they steal one out there, but they have lost 4 of 5 as they come home to take on San Diego. They'll play 3 there, and then it's a rematch with Arizona. So 6 straight here in Philadelphia. I saw an interesting story you had over at PressOfAC.com. It looks like Pleasantville High is going to a rival to fill a job over there.
Yeah, Pleasantville High School hired new boys basketball coach Frank Turner. We all remember him from Atlantic City. One of the winningest players in Atlantic City history, was the point guard on the 2005 team that won the first state title that year. 2006, he led them back to the state final. Went on to have a tremendous career at Canisius College up in Buffalo, then played at Europe for 10, 11 years. He's the new head boys basketball coach at Pleasantville. Hopefully he'll bring some stability there to one of the, traditional programs of the Cape Atlantic League. Struggled with a tremendous history of success. And Antoine Dozier, who is probably one of the more underrated players in Pleasantville history, 2001 graduate, 1,900 career points, is the top assistant. So that's got to be exciting news for Pleasantville when you have Frank Turner of AC and Antoine Dozier going over there to take over the basketball program. And hey, Mike, I'll take those 2 coaches in any 2-on-2 game against any other coaches in the Cape Atlantic League or South Jersey. I'll take Turner and Dozier in a 2-on-2, win the coaches 2-on-2 tournament.
Well, hopefully gives a shot in the arm to both Pleasantville and basketball in the area. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, PressOfAC.com. Check out more on that story over there. And, of course, Mike will be back on Wednesday when hopefully the Phillies can turn this thing around and get their bats going again against the Padres. All right, Mike. Thanks, buddy.
All right, Mike. We'll see you down the road. Thank you.
There you go. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, PressOfAC.com. As we talk a little Phils there. We'll do more Phils coming up with Bob Wankel from RedOctoberPhilly.com in Crossing Broad. He'll join us in about 20 minutes from now when we should have the official news on what's going to happen with Trey Turner and who's going to get sent down. We'll really kind of dive deeper into all that. We'll talk about the outfield situation. There's going to be platoons all over the place, it looks like. Bryson Stott, are you going to see more in Mundo Sosa? He's a right-handed bat. Stott's a left-handed bat. You know, the 93 Phillies had platoons all over the place. Left field, right field. Can we get a third platoon in Philadelphia? Is that a way to get Sosa some more at-bats? We'll talk about that as the Phillies get ready to come home. We'll keep our eye on what the lineup will look like, which is going to be a pretty interesting decision for Rob Thompson tonight with that lineup, and Dave Dombrowski on who is going to get sent down to the minors. Hey, I got a deal for you, and it's my buddy Rocco over at Key Acura of Atlantic City. You know, one of the best things is you can walk into the dealership, with a written estimate on a new 2024 Acura from another Acura dealer. And Rocco at Key Acura will look at that price and beat it by $500 and then give you an additional $500 on your trade. So if you are a loyal Acura driver and you want that new 2024, you know you're getting the best price at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Now through June 30th, by the way, get a 36-month lease on a 2024 Integra for just $299 a month with $49.95 down. That's at Key Acura, Silton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. Follow us at 973 ESPN and use the hashtag SBLive to find us. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad and RedOctoberPhilly.com joins us in less than 20 minutes.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
248, the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. You're killing me, Smalls. I got that story coming up in just a little bit. It's pretty crazy, actually. So, Josh, you'll like this story. A guy that I know finished in last place in his fantasy football league, and he had to do his punishment. Are you in a league where, like, the last place guy has to do something?
I've been in those leagues.
Yeah.
Yes, not recently, but I'm familiar with how the.
It's not novel.
How much dread goes into not being that guy?
Yeah, so like anybody out there been in a fantasy football league where you finish in last place and have to do something? Like, what are some of the punishments? So a guy that I kind of work with, a guy named Joe, he works with Believe. So we do a lot of stuff together. I see him at the Super Bowl all the time. He finished in last place in his fantasy football league. He had to do his punishment over the weekend. So the punishment was he had to sit in a McDonald's for 24 hours unless he could eat his way out of there. So every time he ate something, that reduced his time.
So it could have been anything on the menu.
So, for instance, breakfast item, bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. If he ate one, he lost 45 minutes.
Okay.
If he ate an egg McMuffin, sausage McMuffin, sausage biscuit, 30 minutes.
Now we're getting to math here.
Oh, so everything on the menu had a time that deducted his time in the McDonald's.
So you actually want to start eating the items that have the most amount of time cut off.
So a big breakfast with hotcakes was an hour and 20 minutes, or 120 minutes, I should say.
Okay.
So if you ate a big breakfast with hotcakes, 120 minutes came off the time. So that's 2 hours.
There you go.
Right? So if you ate a Big Mac, you lost 45 minutes. If you ate a double quarter pounder with cheese, you lost 60 minutes.
All right, so I would go double quarter pound with cheese then, all right.
If you ate chicken McNuggets, every 10 you ate, 30 minutes got taken off the list.
Not a big incentive for the chicken nugget.
Well, a lot of these, so the biggest one was the big breakfast with hotcakes. That was 120 minutes.
Right.
You got the big breakfast gave you an hour off, 60 minutes. So how much eating could you have done to get you out of there? Because you had to stay 24. I'm imagining they had to find a McDonald's that was open 24 hours.
Right. You first got to find a McDonald's open 24 hours.
All right. So now you get there at, say, 6 in the morning.
6 in the morning. Right. You just start the day at 6. Easy time.
Okay, so what is your goal to get out of there?
I mean, I'm eating as many big food item time-wise as I can.
So you're just pounding double quarter pounders with cheese? That's an hour.
Well, no, not pounding, but like, if I'm stuck there, right, I'm going to basically find a way to eat all my meals there because I'm already stuck there. So
you're not trying to get out as early as possible. Well, you've already got it in your mind that if you're there at 6 in the morning, you're probably not leaving until about 10 at night.
Right, because I'm not Joey Chestnut. I'm not going to be able to pound about 40 hot dogs in 6 minutes.
No.
So,
how many quarter pounder with cheese? Double quarter. This is the double quarter pounder with cheese, by the way. That was an hour knocked off. Could you eat 2 of those?
I could eat 2 of those. Maybe not sequentially, but maybe like an hour between each of them. You know what I mean? Like you eat one, you wait a little bit, you eat another. So I'm knocking off 2 hours right there.
By the way, the news is down. It's Rojas got sent to AAA. Turner is up. So Rojas goes to Lehigh Valley. We'll talk more about that in 8 minutes with Bob Wankel from Red October Philly.
So what you're telling me is if I eat the triple quarter pounders, blah, blah, easy for me to say, and I eat the big breakfast, I'm knocking off about 3 hours off the top.
Big breakfast with hotcakes. Oh, just the big breakfast or with the hotcakes?
With the hotcakes.
That's 2 hours.
That's 2 hours.
Big breakfast with hotcakes is 120 minutes.
So now I'm down to 20 hours. I need to find some more food to eat later in the day after breakfast and lunch that'll cut me down even more.
Yep.
This is about strategy at this point.
Well, I mean, so you're telling me for breakfast at 6 a.m., all you could fit in is the hotcakes and the big breakfast? That's 2 hours if you could eat that and then something else. Like hotcakes and sausage, that's another hour.
See, I'm a slow eater at this point in my life, Mike. So.
Well, slow is fine. But if you can get that all down, you can cut can you eat 4 hash browns?
Yeah.
That's 25 minutes apiece.
Okay, so that's another hour.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now I'm down to 19.
Or you could do the fruit and maple oatmeal. You want to eat some oatmeal? That's 25 minutes.
Actually.
Yeah, the breakfast stuff, you could cut some time, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. There's a 4-hour block in there.
Right, you just eat throughout the morning, and you're slicing off time in the 24 hours here.
Yeah, I'm wondering, this is, by the way, the person who came up with this is great.
I just look at this as a strategy.
That's what I'm saying. This is a great punishment. And then the strategy of the punishment to try to get out of there earlier, whoever came up with the time reduction, bravo. This is one of the best punishments for fantasy sports, period.
I might have to steal this idea.
I think so. What is the worst fantasy league punishment?
What is the worst thing on the McDonald's menu for you, Mike?
I like Jeff, by the way. He says, I want to know who's hanging around to make sure he was eating all the food.
That's a good question.
He's got to, be counting the minutes. They got to do shifts, I would imagine. All right, when we come back, the news is in. The Phillies have reinstated Trey Turner from the injured list, but a starter got sent to the minors. The impact coming up next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
In the case of the Phillies, they made it very clear they want to upgrade the outfield. That's what they want. I don't think they're getting enough offense that they want overall in the outfield. And so I think they like to get a starter, and I think they like to get a better fourth outfielder. And it's not because, that's my opinion, because that's what they tell me.
3 o'clock, Jim Bowden on MLB Network said they want to get a starting outfielder. Well, they need a new one because they just optioned one to AAA to make room for Trey Turner. He is up. We'll see what the lineup looks like tonight. Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com, Crossing Broad, and a lot of Phillies stuff to dive into. Moments ago, the Phillies announced that Trey Turner is back. And Bob, I guess it's not a huge surprise that the guy that's going down is Johan Rojas. We discussed it on Friday that would be a possibility, but he's the guy. What is the message there?
Well, I think that the message is that, I don't know if it's a message. I just don't think that Johan Rojas is good enough. I go back to something that happened over the weekend. He gets thrown out on Friday night from second base. And after the game, Rob Thompson basically more or less said, like, he's got to score on that play. And, you know, you have to have a bigger lead and you have to not be so conservative in that spot. And I just think that there's this understanding that his overall readiness, it may just not be there for a team that has the level of expectations that this Phillies team currently has. And if you said to me in the beginning of the year, hey, if Johan Rojas, right, if he hits 230, 235, like you sign up for that all day. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is you go back to May 3rd. That was his first game of the month of May. He's had 105 plate appearances. In those 105 plate appearances since his first game of May, he has walked one time. Do you know how many extra base hits he has? One. He hit a home run. Not one double, not one triple. Over 105 plate appearances. I mean, we can talk about batting average, but it's about as hollow as it gets. So if he's not going to be the premium defender that you expected, though he has been better out there lately, and he's not doing the little things for you, he's certainly not bringing the offensive upside to the equation. This is a situation where Phillies maintain their flexibility. They keep Pache, they keep Dahl in the mix. And Johan Rojas has some time to go down and try to figure it out.
Do you anticipate that we've seen the last of Rojas this year?
I wouldn't be surprised if Johan Rojas factored into a trade next month. I think a lot of packages centered around players. There's certainly you want prospects, but certain teams are going to want usable major league players in the short term as well. And I think Johan Rojas is a little bit of a unique blend of that. He's showed a little bit of offensive ability in parts of two seasons, certainly not enough, but I think the defense is real and he's very young. And so would a team be interested in that? I think so. I think that's possible. If not, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a world where he's back up here at some point. I don't think that this is the end of Johan Rojas's career or anything like that, but this team this isn't the 2016 Phillies. Like, they've got to win now. Yeah. I don't think he's really doing enough to help them.
Well, 23 years old, right? He's obviously a guy that is young and possibly, but all right. So then the ripple effect is a Marsh Pache. You heard the bite from Bowden. Obviously, Marsh Pache, Merrifield Dahl. Is that an outfield that makes you say this is a World Series team?
I think that it's quite clear at this point that they need to add another impact outfield bat. It's something that you and I have talked about previously. It's just not getting any better. And I think that you could make the argument that they need another impact outfield bat, even if Nick Castellanos were getting it together. But the fact of the matter is Nick Castellanos just continues to scuffle. Like, yes, if you excuse the first 30 games of the season and you start at May 1st, Castellanos' overall numbers do look a little bit better. I still think that you have to play. I know people are going to scream when they hear me say this, especially after an 0-for-14 weekend where he strikes out 6 times. I just don't know what your other options are out there other than trying to let him figure it out for the next month. But there is a breaking point.
Yeah, what is the threshold with him? That's what I'm wondering. Like, where do the Phillies say he hasn't had a day off yet? What's the threshold of we gave you every chance to turn this around?
I would tell you this. I forget the contract for a minute. I mean, I think that right now would be a great opportunity to sit him down, except that you're getting Trey Turner back tonight. And to me, it's like a chance to sort of reset. And there you go. You see him in the lineup hitting 6. Like you get, hitting 6. You get him an opportunity here to say, like, all right, we got another piece back now. Like let's put our lineup out there. Let's put our real lineup out there. You know, those top 3 guys. Hopefully it lengthens things out a little bit. So I have no problem with him playing tonight. The threshold, though, to answer your question, it's about 5 weeks away. I mean, I think there's a world where you have to start looking at it, and after 4 months, if the guy isn't getting it done.
Well, how hard is it that his contract is not? It's not like he's done it this year either. I mean, he got another year.
He's got another 2 years and $40 million beyond this season. So, I mean, that's certainly part of it, but it will reach a point for the Phillies where it's like, how do we make the most of 2024? We'll deal with 25 and beyond at some point. But I still think right now, because of the names you just mentioned, Pache, March, you talk about Dahl, Merrifield. These aren't names that make you say, like, let's bump Nick Castellanos out of the lineup for what? For some more David Dahl, like who's 2 for his last 20. Yep. So the problem is you don't have bona fide everyday guys out there. And so like Castellanos still represents the closest thing to it.
Yeah.
So you just keep running him out there until you look at the trade market and see what you can come up with. They're going to have to add an outfielder, and I think it's more than a fourth outfielder. I think that has to be a starting caliber, everyday type guy.
Phillies lineup is out. It's brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage, Rio Grande. Moving's a breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Stott, Castellanos, Marsh, Dahl, Marchand. Sanchez starts tonight. So you got the lefties at the bottom, Marsh, Dahl, and Marchand is a switch, and then that flips over to Schwarber at the top of the lineup, who also bats left-handed, and of course Harper, and then there's Stott. We'll get to him in just a minute, but the outfield, right, not productive, no more Rojas, and I would imagine, I was laughing about this before. I mean, Dahl turns into Jake Cave now almost, but even with a bigger role. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a straight platoon in left field for the foreseeable future. Do you get enough production from this outfield? Obviously not, which means you got to get production from other places on the field, and your catching spot's not giving you anything. That's a spot where this team gets offense from generally. So you look at all this stuff, and do you start to say, hey, you open up this lead, but it's not safe?
I don't know that the lead isn't safe. I mean, the Braves have so many issues. So many issues. We know about Ronald Acuna. We know about Spencer Strider, but now you have Michael Harris is on the IL. They've had a ton of starting pitching problems behind Sale and Fried. The guys come up, they send them down. They're a mess right now, Atlanta. So I don't know that the Phillies are necessarily in a situation where they're going to watch this lead evaporate, but like we talk about since the start of the season, the Phillies are a top 5 scoring offense, and they've been up there. But since May 24th, that's when they went out to Colorado Memorial Day weekend. They're 22nd in OPS, 21st in batting average, 20th in on-base percentage, 20th in slugging percentage. So it's basically been a bottom 10 offense for about 24 days now. So I mean, that's not a season. It's not even a full month, but lately they have not been great. Like they are getting exposed in a number of areas. And you showed that lineup. You went over the lineup. I mean, Bryson Stott has 218 at bats this season, 75 of which have come in the 5 spot of this order. Bryson Stott hasn't homered since May 18th. His OPS is under 700. He's hitting 194 with a 583 OPS over his last 30 games. Does that scream 5-hitter to you?
He was hitting 4 the other night.
I mean, that's the part of the problem here is that like Bryson Stott's going through it. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
I love Bryson Stott. I think he's a good player. I believe in him long term, but like fact of the matter is that he's not having a great season.
All right. Well, now that Turner's back, do you see more Sosa platooning at second base?
You wonder that. I actually asked my Crossing Broad colleague, Anthony Sanfilippo, this very question earlier this morning. Edmundo Sosa is hitting .333 against left-handed pitching this season. His OPS is over 1,100 right now. Is there a world where you get to a spot with Bryson Stott where you say, like, look, like, you've got to be better and we need all the offense we can get? We're going to have to sit you down a little bit. I don't think that – I mean, they are not there right now. The Phillies aren't there right now. But does it get to a spot another month out if he's continuing on this type of run where they feel like, hey, this is one way to get Edmundo Sosa back in the lineup a little bit? I mean, they're doing it out of necessity, but they've shown an inclination to go to platoons. So will they go pure platoon with Bryson Stott? I find that very hard to believe, but does Edmundo Sosa get some cracks at it?
Well, you wonder, Bob, with Turner back, Turner takes very few days off. How do you get Sosa even into the lineup other than maybe once every other, 10 days or something like that without saying, you know what, we're going to play more second base with him. I mean, he can play third every now and then and give Bohm a day off, but God, Bohm's the one guy hit this weekend.
Yeah, Bohm hit this weekend, and we've talked about Alec Bohm quite a bit. He went through a 35-game stretch where he hit 220 with a 600 OPS. I mean, he hadn't done anything for a prolonged stretch. Now, this weekend, he was fantastic. He was 8 for 13. He had 3 doubles. I mean, he's back up, OPS back up over 800 now. He's back up over 300 on the season. He moved from 286 to 303 with his weekend. Like, really good weekend for Alec Bohm. On pace to knock in 130 runs. Hard to imagine, even when Bohm struggles, which he has shown that he will and is not immune to those prolonged slumps, that's a guy that they want to keep running out there. Trey Turner's not coming out of the lineup.
No.
So, yeah, how do you get Edmundo Sosa in? Obviously, you say to yourself, well, the beginning of spring training in 23, they let him run around the outfield a little bit. Maybe they can play him out there if things continue to go south with the outfield. Maybe. but probably not. Right now he's going to go down to a matchup role and probably play once a week.
Yeah, Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com, crossing broad, the Phillies outfield. And then that's another thing is, you just said, Dahl got off to a hot start. He hit 2 home runs, and everyone's like, whoa, he's down to 231, struggling. But how long can you keep platooning him if he's not going to do anything?
Well, he has to hit to stay up here. There's no question about it. At the same time, it's baseball. It's hard. I don't expect David Dahl to come up here and hit 375 and win every right-left matchup he gets. That's not realistic. So he's going through a little bit right now. But how much of a leash does he have? Probably not that long of a leash. Now, I'm not saying that means that Johan Rojas comes right back up either. But, Cody Clemens comes back. He's probably destined to go back to AAA at this point. But they have a lot of options. I don't know if any of them are any good.
Yeah.
But they do have a lot of options.
Yeah, you just said, I don't know that they're any good. So at that point, Dave Dombrowski, does he have to alter his timeline on when he wants to make a decision on this outfield here?
Well, I think that they would love to bring in a guy sooner rather than later, but I'm sure that you have looked at the standings, and the American League is starting to, separate itself a little bit. I mean, you have the Yankees, the Guardians, the Mariners winning the divisions, and then when you get into the wild card spot, there's 3 pretty clear-cut wild card teams right now, with Kansas City, with Baltimore, and Minnesota kind of in that mix. Red Sox are in striking distance, but the AL is sort of kind of coming together. The National League is a disaster right now. I mean, you have a Padres team coming in here to Philly this weekend under 500, and they're in the playoffs if the season ended today. I mean, as bad as the Mets have been, they split with the Phillies in London, come home, win 5 out of 6, and the Mets are a game and a half out of a playoff spot right now. There's only 2 teams in the National League that have essentially been, I don't want to say eliminated, but have no shot, and that's the Rockies and Marlins. Everyone else is within 2 games.
Yeah. The Mets are a game and a half. The Mets are a game and a half out, and they are the 3rd team from the bottom in the National League. That's how crazy the National League is. So your point is, nobody's ready to kind of mail it in.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 teams in the entire sport right now that are in clear-cut sell mode.
Jeez.
Other than that, I mean, you even look at some of these American League teams that are struggling. Astros have not had a good season. Everyone keeps talking about Kyle Tucker. Is there not a world where the Astros, with that veteran group, figure it out, get hot for a couple weeks, get themselves back into it? So, point being, you have 5.5 weeks here to let the standings sort of settle. And if you're the Phillies, you better hope that there's a 9th and 10th and 11th team willing to sell off. Because right now, everyone's kind of in it still.
Bob, I kind of likened it to, like, when I go to Clearwater from Tuesday to Tuesday, when I get to that Monday, I always say, I probably should have gone home today. Like, I don't need to sit around for because now I'm just waiting to go to the airport because I'm out of gas. That seemed like the Phillies this weekend. Like, backpacking Europe sounds fun until you're like, man, I could really use my bed. They just look like a team that the schedule did them no favors. Is that fair to say, or is that like, hey, you got to figure it out? The Mets, they went home because the Mets went home because people say, oh, that London thing. I know Patalico's been going crazy. Why would you put this in the middle of the season? The Mets won but they did go home. Did the Phillies just look like a team that needed their beds?
A little bit. I mean, look, this is a Philadelphia market. Absolutely nobody wants to hear about the toll of travel on the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Phillies have benefited
By
from
the way,
schedule,
not only
right?
the Phillies, the fan, they went to London and packed the place. They went to Boston and packed the place, and they went to Baltimore. You know, I had to tap out. I was supposed to go to Baltimore Saturday. I had to tap out. I had no gas in the tank.
Well, the Phillies fans had more juice than the Phillies did on Saturday and Sunday. There's no question about that. But look, it is real. Like, nobody wants to hear it. It is an excuse. So, like, let's not say otherwise. It is an excuse, but it's real. I mean, like, that flight is real. And then to come back and have to go to Baltimore and Boston, I'm actually surprised that the Players Union allows that. You know, if I would make a thing about that going into the next CBI. I'd be like, hey, listen, you want to send me over to London in the middle of the season? No problem. But when I come back, I'm going home.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big ask of guys. And even tonight, like, there's no off night tonight. You have to come back to Philly now. Like, hey, happy Father's Day. You've been on the road for the last week. You're Bryson Stott, right? Like, people do not think about this. You're Bryson Stott. You're a brand new first-time father. You just came back from London. Then you went to Boston. Then you went to Baltimore. You weren't at home for your first Father's Day. Hey, they're back today. Maybe they can do all the Father's Day stuff on a Monday. Nope, you got to be at the park at 1:30. Like, this is a lot. It is. Whether or not people want to hear it, it is a lot.
And do you think that was Rob Thompson's way of showing it yesterday? I'm done with this trip. I need to get the heck home.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think Rob. I was surprised that Rob had that gear. If you know him a little bit, like it was kind of surprising to see, but I thought it was a little bit too late. Honestly, I think Rob should have probably been out there in about the 5th inning with that one.
He had breakfast at Miss Shirley's down there in Baltimore plans because he had a point to some extent. I mean, it looked like the guy at first base to overrule that, but Stubbs is sting. It did not look like it hit his foot.
I don't think it did, but I think it was
Stubbs
a culmination of
Stubbs is sticking to it that it did. After the game, he said, I know it doesn't look like it hit my foot, but it did hit my foot.
Yeah, well, independent of what actually happened on that play, I mean, I think Rob's reaction wasn't so much about that play. It was about the 5 or 6 misses by Mike Estabrook leading up to that play. Yes. I mean, even you just go to the first pitch of the game or first batter of the game for the Orioles, right? Like, you talk about Gunnar Henderson. Gunnar Henderson is one of the best hitters in the American League. He's hard to get out when you give him 3 strikes. Give him 4, and you see what happens. And you fast forward 9 innings. Phillies didn't lose that game yesterday because of Mike Estabrook. They did not. They did not play well enough. But that was a tone setter, and it changed the entire complexion and feeling of the game early on.
Yeah, a couple positives from the weekend, I guess, was the turnaround of Bohm. Other than that, not much. You tweeted about Dominguez. Looks like he might be coming around a bit. Kerkering Friday night, I thought he looked pretty solid. He threw that pitch away from Why did Marchand not get that ball and get that guy out by like 10 feet?
Looked like when he was retreating back towards the plate, the cutout on the dirt grass, it looks like he just tripped himself out, like the old sniper, and he kind of stumbled to the plate. I mean, that was a dead out.
Oh, man.
Things happen. Great game on Friday night. If we did this hit on Saturday morning, I would have told you that the Phillies rose to the occasion. One of the best games I've seen all year.
Yeah, I said Friday, my point was they got to get one down there. I didn't expect one, but if they could get one, you feel all right, you get home. That's a really good Orioles team. How fun would it be to see those two in October?
That was my I don't get a lot right, and I could very well still be wrong, but that was my preseason World Series matchup, so we'll see.
Well, last year I had Baltimore as the team to make the playoffs that nobody would think. This year I would agree with you. I think that may be, if they could get maybe another arm. I love Burns, but he has been in the playoffs. They might need another guy at the top of that rotation, but that lineup is pretty damn nasty. Although they could use some center field help.
Yeah, I mean, the guy Bradish has been pretty good for them, but he might be out a while now. We'll see what happens with him. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez, you saw on Saturday, they can throw it a little bit too. Yeah. Orioles need a little bit of bullpen help. Craig Kimbrell was good this weekend, which I know is very annoying for everyone here. But he was good this weekend. He's really struggled for prolonged stretches this season. They probably need another arm in the bullpen, probably need another starting pitcher, but that lineup is as good as it gets.
Very good. Bob Wankel, check out the newsletter, redoctoberphilly.com, and of course, Crossing Broad for more on the Phillies. They got a new podcast out over there on all the stuff we just kind of talked about, but a little bit more in depth with Anthony and Bob, and of course, right here on the Sports Bash, the Phillies, no days off. They're back tonight, tomorrow, Wednesday. They actually are off on Thursday. They'll get a little break there. All right, Bob, we'll talk to you Friday, man.
All right, man. Talk soon.
Bob Wankel, redoctoberphilly.com, and of course, Crossing Broad covers the Phillies, and he does it with us here every Monday and Friday on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We got a lot to do still. Coming up at 4 o'clock, Jeff Mosher has today's football at 4 as we have news on when we'll see the Eagles again. Ryan in EHT chimes in. He says, Phillies need to make a splash. You go out and get Kyle Tucker, package center around Abel, Crawford, Rojas, and a couple more. You want to be a serious contender? You make that trade. Mick Abel's ERA is 7 right now. I don't know that anybody wants Mick Abel. Possibly, yes. I know a team would be intrigued by Abel, but his ERA, he's been a problem. Rojas, is he a guy that teams are going to want in a deal to say, hey, we're getting our next center fielder. By the way, since making his Major League debut July 15th, Johan Rojas has played in 117 games, 265, 303 on base percentage, and 16 defensive runs saved in that span. I mean, you're getting a guy who's very good defensively, but has a lot of work that he needs to do offensively. Trey Turner's back. He's hitting number 2 tonight. We got more on that coming up later on in the show. It's a Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, Eagles training camp. The date has been announced. That's next. This is the Sports Bash.
With everything you have on your plate, earning your degree online seems impossible. But at Grand Canyon University, we specialize in helping you fit a master's degree in education into your busy day. Your graduation team, led by your own GCU counselor, provides you with the personal support you need to succeed. Achieve your goals with a plan and team behind you. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Take these plastic people, read their lips, now let it linger.
328 Sports Bash. You heard the news. You see the news if you're watching the show on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. Trey Turner is back with the Phillies. Johan Rojas option to AAA Lehigh Valley. Eagles news today. They sent out a press release on the official start of training camp. So we now know when the Eagles will be back on the field. We know that they are out for a little while here. There's a lot of quiet time in Eagles land, but football at 4 will have more coming up in 31 minutes from now. But the Eagles will be back at training camp, and that will be officially when players report on Tuesday, July 23rd, which means we are just over a month to Eagles training camp. You heard Nick Earnshaw with the question of the day. What is the biggest training camp story between the offensive side of the ball, the new coordinator, the right guard spot, Jason Kelce being replaced, on the defensive side of the ball, the new coordinator, the linebacker position, that cornerback room, who's going to be playing safety, what's Bryce Huff? There are so many fair questions regarding this team between now and the start of the season. And we had Sal Paolantonio on Friday's show, and he chronicled a bunch of different things that this team has. And one of the things we talked about was the center position and just how important that center position is. And we know that Kelce held it down for years. Are we taking for granted that the center position is in good hands? I think many people just assume that Cam Jurgens is going to come in and be the guy and you're not going to miss a beat. We'll see. I think that one is definitely a big storyline. The other one on the right guard spot, how will that shape out? How will that kind of materialize? Is it Tyler Steen? Is it Mekhi Becton getting a chance there? They have a couple veteran guys. Matt Hennessy they signed. They have a couple other guys who have been in the league that you can kind of push into that right guard spot if things go a little haywire. But, man, July 23rd, what's the number one story entering Eagles training camp this year?
I know for me it's the offensive line, Mike. I know it's not a sexy conversation, but I think that, as you just said, I think there has been a bit of taking for granted, the whole Jeff Stoutland University, that, Stoutland's just going to turn Jurgens into Jason Kelce or whoever they put at right guard, he's going to work. And I just don't think it's fair to project that kind of expectation onto Jurgens, Steen, Becton, Matt Hennessy, whoever might get out there.
Well, I think we sometimes, are spoiled with the fact that the Eagles offensive line basically had 5 guys who you liked, 5 guys that were all pretty good. And it might be the first time that there is a weak spot on this offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the first time since Doug Peterson's first year, basically, that there's been some legitimate questions on the offensive line. Remember, Mike, when they acquired Brandon Brooks, part of the reason why they acquired Brandon Brooks years ago for right guard was because to give Kelce some protection. Kelce wasn't always the future Hall of Famer. Remember those games, the end of the 2016 season, was it against the Bengals? We had all those mess ups. I mean, there was a time where people were like, get Kelce out of here. So people forget that. That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, and those are just 2 stories. I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, I think we're looking at Kelce being retired and the right guard spot.
Yep.
But you also have a new coordinator. And how is he going to use this influx of talent that they have and get the most out of it? I think that's one thing with Kellen Moore we still need to see is, all right, how's he going to incorporate Saquon Barkley? How is Dallas Goedert going to be a bigger part of this offense if he is? He has used the tight end way more than the Eagles have the last couple of years in his stop in L.A. with the Chargers last year. They got more production from their tight ends than the Eagles did. He's got A.J. Brown. He has Devontae Smith. He's not really had 2 guys. Now, last year he had 2 really good receivers, but they're injured.
Yep.
With
quarterback was injured last year.
Keenan McCardle and, of course, Mike Williams. So he had 2 good receivers, but didn't really have the full complement of them healthy and shooting on all cylinders. So how is Kellen Moore going to be able to figure out how to keep everybody happy in this offense? I think those are big-time storylines as we count down to camp. July 23rd, the Eagles announce that's when all players will report.
And then, of course, the icing on the cake of the Kellen Moore conversation is Jalen Hurts' comment saying that 95% of the offense is different. Well, how does that impact?
If I tell you 95% of the offense is different, do you like that or are you concerned by that?
Can I say both?
I guess.
I mean, it's right. Like, one part of it is like, hey, they have a chance to be better than last year, Mike. But at the same time, aren't you a little concerned that is there going to be a bit of a learning curve to start the year?
Well, that's my thing is, are we excited by the fact that the offense will be different or are we kind of wishy-washy about a new offense because now Jalen Hurts has to learn another new offense? And he was vocal about it. 95% of this offense is different. 95% of the offense, I got to try to master this now, make it my own. And that's going to be, there's a learning curve there. Getting ready for the season, not having that offense already in. Now, you would say, well, he was supposed to know the offense last year. Well, you had a new coordinator last year. So this is the 3rd offense in a row that he is going to have to, the one year they went to the Super Bowl. Why? Well, the first time he had back-to-back offense the same with Shane Steichen calling the plays.
It's also the first time he had the same voice in his ear 2 straight years. People overlook the fact of,
Well, that's the price of success. Keep that in mind.
Yeah,
right?
It's true.
The price of success is people are going to pluck coaches from you.
Right.
You're going to have to fill those shoes. And the best part of it is, do you have help from within that can keep the continuity? The Eagles tried that last year and it didn't work.
It failed miserably because we all thought that Brian Johnson, because of his previous relationship with Jalen Hurts, was going to help him. And you could argue that Johnson did not put him and the offense in a position to be successful.
609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. The Eagles announced that training camp will open. That will be July 23rd. I can't believe July 23rd. Like, I'm looking at, the calendar right now, and you're saying that's almost a month from now that this is going to be kicking off. And there's so many, look, we're just kind of ripping off a bunch of different things. This is just on the offensive side of the ball. Off the bat, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they had big years last year. Well, they have bigger years in this offense with Kellen Moore. I don't know. I mean, is he going to try to get Saquon Barkley more involved? I think that was one of the things that got overlooked in Dallas. People talked about what he did with Zeke Elliott there. This is a completely different back than Zeke Elliott.
Yes.
Elliott did catch the ball out of the backfield earlier in his Dallas tenure. He did catch the ball, early on in his tenure there, but he's definitely a different style of running back than Saquon Barkley. I think Barkley, I don't know that anybody would argue, is a bigger weapon than Zeke. But by the way, Zeke in his early Dallas days, I think in 2019 is when he had his rookie year, he was a beast.
Right, but that was before Moore became the coordinator.
But 2019, I think, is when Moore became the coordinator. When was Moore the coordinator in Dallas? 2019.
I thought it was 2018.
Was Zeke, 2018 and 2019, Elliott had still very productive seasons. So it has shown that now, the one thing between those 2018 and 2019 with Kellen Moore in Dallas, I don't know if he was the coordinator. I can't remember when his first year was.
2019.
All right, so 2018 was not Kellen Moore. 2019, he had 300 carries that year, 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. But he also caught the ball that year in 2019 54 times. Now, the year before, he had 77 catches. But He was still a factor out of the backfield in Kellen Moore. He caught the ball 50 times, almost 3 times, 54, 52, and 47.
If you take the 4 years Kellen Moore was coordinator for the Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard combined average almost 98 targets per season.
Now, this guy, by the way, this is a fair. The guy the other day who texted in, this guy's right. He said not to nitpick. Keenan McCardle has been retired for 20 years. Keenan McCardle, Jacksonville, yes. I'm talking about Keenan Allen. Yeah. I did say Keenan McCardle. It was Keenan Allen. Now, that's a fair nitpick. That guy is fair to call me out on that.
That's actually funny.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, Keenan McCardle, Jacksonville. Who was his running mate out there?
It was Jimmy Smith, wasn't it?
There you go. Keenan McCardle and Jimmy Smith.
Was that Fred Taylor in the backfield?
Yeah, with Mark Brunell.
Mark Brunell, the
great
lefty.
Fantasy years out there.
Tom Coughlin, the head coach.
Keenan Allen was the wideout that was down there.
It's good on the rabbit hole for 60 seconds.
Yeah, sorry. Well, the guy was... Listen, it's fair to call me out.
Who would you rather have, Keenan McCardle or Keenan Allen?
That was fair to call me out on that one. The other guy the other day, that was poor.
Oh, the other one, yeah. That guy on Friday was ridiculous.
Poor. Yeah, that was poor.
That guy from Cape Courthouse embarrassed the whole town.
He did. All right, what else we got? What were you saying?
Well, I was talking about the running backs, how Elliott and Pollard, in the 4 years that they had Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator, combined for almost 98 targets per season, those two running backs. It's fair to assume that the Eagles will have more because in the Nick Sirianni era, the two top running backs have averaged 75 total targets per season. So you're potentially looking at a 20-target boost to the running backs under Kellen Moore.
I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to utilize Saquon Barkley. Like, is he going to say, hey, I'm going to use him like I did Zeke Elliott? Now, remember, Zeke Elliott in 2019 had 300 carries. Do the Eagles look at Barkley as a guy who could tote the rock 300 times?
Well, then what else are you paying him for?
Exactly. But that's a double-edged sword. You're paying him, but do you want to wear him out? Because Zeke Elliott, basically, after he had 300 carries back-to-back years, he has not been Zeke Elliott.
Right. So can you offset maybe instead of giving Barkley 300 carries, maybe you give him, and I'm just throwing out a number here, 250 carries and offset that number with another 50 targets?
Well, Zeke had 71 targets in 2019, 71 targets in 2020, and 65 targets in 2021. Seems pretty consistent of how he uses his running back out of the backfield.
Yeah, he's always going to the running back. It's one of the keys to Moore's play calling because of his own background. So we have complained, Mike, about Jalen Hurts targeting the running back. Are we going to finally see the running back as a part of the option in his offense? And then the flip side, how does that impact Smith?
What was the other Eagles news today? They announced the one practice at Lincoln Financial Field. That will be on August 1st. It's a Thursday, which isn't too far from now. And then single game tickets will go on sale tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Yes,
so tomorrow, 10 a.m., you can purchase single game Eagles tickets, 4-ticket limit per household. And you are encouraged, this is from the Eagles, to go to Ticketmaster as soon as they go on sale due to a huge demand. Travel packages and tickets for the opener in Brazil can be purchased through On Location. That's the only spot you can get those for those people who are looking at. But so that's the news today. June 18th, tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, tickets go on sale for single game. Thursday, August 1st, 6:30. Lincoln Financial Field will be the team's training camp public practice, and those tickets go on sale tomorrow, by the way.
Correct.
As well. And then training camp officially reports on Tuesday, July 23rd.
And by the way, the general admission for the public practice tickets are $10. Special VIP tickets are $35. All proceeds go to the Eagles Autism Foundation.
609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Real quick, changing some gears here. The All-Star balloting results came out for the first wave.
Yep.
So right now, Bryce Harper is the leading vote getter. Is this just in the National League or all of baseball?
That's just the National League. The leading vote getter in all of baseball is Aaron Judge.
Judge leads. All right, so Bryce Harper leads at first.
Yes.
JT Realmuto is second at second base, catcher.
Yes.
Second base, Bryson Stott is third. He's kind of in the mix there.
Yep.
Alec Boehm is going to be the starting third baseman. He is so far ahead of Manny Machado right now. Alec Boehm has over 1 million votes. In fact,
he has the third most votes of anyone in the National League.
Alec Boehm has the third most. Manny Machado is second. He has 267,000 votes. Alec Boehm has 1 million votes.
Alec Boehm has almost 10,000 more votes than Ohtani right now.
Right. Ohtani is the leading vote getter as the designated hitter. Schwarber is third, who, by the way, only has 400. How did Boehm get over 1 million and Schwarber only has 435,000?
I guess the Philly fans don't like Schwarber right now.
Jeez. Ohtani has a little over 1 million. And Boehm has a little over 1 million, but Boehm has more than Ohtani does.
It's almost 10 million. It's like 9,972 or something like that.
At shortstop, Trey Turner's actually second, but he's like 500,000 behind Mookie Betts. Now Betts is hurt.
Wait, Betts got the broken hand.
So this is going to be interesting. Turner missed all this time, 38 games. Betts now, he might not be able to play, so Turner might be able to slide in there and get the, because he's 200,000 above Ellie De La Cruz.
Correct. And if Turner can slide right in, then that's another player for the Phillies in the All-Star game.
Brandon Marsh and Nick Castellanos are actually 5th and 6th in the voting. Now, if Nick Castellanos, and by the way, Johan Rojas is 7th. So if somehow Marsh, Castellanos, and Rojas make the All-Star game, that would be an atrocity.
If Castellanos makes anything, it's an atrocity.
So right now, your starters would be Contreras, Harper, Luis Ariz, Boehm, Mookie Betts, who's hurt. Ohtani would be your DH, and your outfield would be Profar, Yelich, and Tatis.
Oh, you see Tatis and Profar tonight.
Yeah, and it's funny because Profar was a guy who was a free agent in the offseason. I think people were kind of talking about, and he was like a high prospect at one point who's just never really kind of made it. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN. Free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Coming up, you're killing me, Smalls. Wait till you hear this story. Have you seen this story?
You started telling me about it, then we got interrupted by something earlier today.
It's unbelievable.
I can't wait.
This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, installation. Call them 609-390-3907 online, broadlees.net. When we come back, you're killing me, Smalls. Don't go away. This is the Sports Bash.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
351, you're killing me, Smalls. So, you remember the movie The Sandlot, right?
I mean, if you haven't seen The Sandlot, you're a sports fan?
Took me a while to see it, but I finally did.
But you saw it. That's what
I did.
matters.
I've seen it, and I've seen it multiple times.
There you go. See, it's all that counts.
So, the actor who played Smalls in the movie, his name is Tom Geary.
Mm-hmm.
He was arrested for tossing a weight through his neighbor's windshield.
I'm sorry, what?
He tossed a weight through the Jeep of his neighbor's windshield. He picked up the weight, launched it, and threw it through the windshield of his neighbor.
Do you have information on how heavy this weight was?
It looked pretty big. There's actual video of it.
Wow.
So
we have documentation.
There is video of the weight being thrown through. According to TMZ, Tom Geary, who played Smalls in the movie, got busted for throwing a strike, but cops say he didn't hit his target with a baseball. He used a dumbbell. TMZ obtained video of the alleged incident, and it appears to show Tom tossing a huge weight on a car windshield, shattering it completely. Now, there is video of it, and if you are able to watch over at 97.3 ESPN on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. What am I calling it? X, Twitter. Let me see if I can, I'll bring the video up for the people watching real quick. So if you're watching at 97.3 ESPN, I will quickly bring this up onto the screen here so that you guys can see it. All right, here we go. Here is the video of the actor who plays Smalls in the movie Sandlot. There you go. So you see him? He throws the dumbbell, smashes the windshield there with no shirt on. Are you watching this?
I am, yeah.
So he's walking across the street now. And apparently the guy's windshield, who he busted, he didn't even have a problem with that guy.
First of all, the strut away.
The strut was great.
The strut is like WWE.
We're talking about Smalls, though. Look at this. Bang!
I mean, that's a...
What's the weight size there? You're a weight guy.
I mean, I gotta say that's at least 30 pounds, if not more.
Yeah, he took it with two hands and threw it.
That looks like to be about maybe like
Now he
30.
rings the guy's doorbell. Look at him. He's ready to fight the guy. He's got something in his hand.
What is going on here?
Yeah, I don't know what he's saying, but the ring doorbell's got him. He's got no shirt on. He's got a pair of jeans, sneakers.
Is that a knife?
Looks like he's got something in his hand, right?
Maybe it's a screwdriver. I'm not sure.
You're killing me, Smalls. He was supposed to be like the wholesome kid, right? Wasn't that his role in the movie?
They grow up at some point, I guess. Wow.
Seems like a lot of those young kids always end up. The sheriff's department, he was arrested June 2nd after officers responded to a disturbance call and found him in the middle of the street. Cops say they started talking to him, and he was inquiring about his wife. And that's when the owner of the Jeep shouted at Tom, "Really? My window's been shattered." Tom replied, "That sucks, man. I'll pay you back. I'm sorry. I'm going to get you back." So apparently he broke the wrong guy's window. You're killing me, Smalls. Mosher, next.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, whatever the sport, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Jeff Mosher is here today as the Eagles officially announced their training camp dates. You can buy season tickets, or single game tickets starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. And of course, the opening of Lincoln Financial Field to see practice, that has been announced as well, August the 1st. And all that Eagles news and notes and more coming up on Football at 4 with Jeff Mosher here on the Sports Bash in just a couple of moments. One thing I did see today, I was reading Albert Breer over at Sports Illustrated, SI.com, and he was talking about the one area where the Eagles, they feel they've had the biggest improvement this offseason. And that was in the secondary. Obviously, they added a lot of people in that secondary, but one of the things that he wrote is one sign of the improvement, meaning that the secondary has improved so much so that the Eagles are toying with moving James Bradbury to safety, a more suitable role for him on the roster, something that they wouldn't be doing if they didn't feel a lot better about the young talent they have at the position. And you take a look at that room. We've talked a lot about it, but I'm really intrigued to find out about contractually. Does it make more sense for the Eagles to just keep Bradbury because of what he's owed, and move him to safety? Or is he a guy that they have to try to figure out what to do with? Let's bring Jeff Mosher in from the Inside the Birds podcast, new edition. You can check that out at Inside the Birds on all podcasting platforms. And, of course, on the YouTube channel, just search Inside the Birds. And there's Jeff Mosher. He joins me now on a Sports Bash Monday Football at 4 edition. What's up, Moshe?
Mike, how you doing, man? What's going on?
All is good, buddy. Training camp announced July 23rd. We are about 1 month away from players reporting to camp, right? I mean, holy mackerel. When that came out today, July 23rd for training camp. We got a little bit of a lull in there, but it feels like the summer hasn't even really kicked off, and now we're already counting down to training camp, buddy.
Hopefully it's a long month, Mike. Hopefully a month feels like a year.
We bring that up because one of the big stories at training camp, and Albert Breer wrote about this today, about the improvement in the Eagles secondary and the cornerback room. And one of the things he wrote was one sign of the improvement in that room as that the Eagles are toying with moving aging corner James Bradberry to safety, a more suitable role for him on the roster. You guys did a whole series on contracts, and I wonder, when you look at Bradberry's contract, does that definitively tell you that he will be here come training camp on this roster?
It does not. You know, I still think in the end, if a deal can be made, and we're talking about at the end of camp, team needs a corner, and it gives the bottom basement to Howie Roseman. We're talking about one of those conditional picks. Maybe it's a 5 that becomes a 4 based on playing time, or if he, makes a Pro Bowl or something like that, becomes a 3. Who knows? I think that any kind of deal that would be available for James Bradberry like that, the organization would jump on, unless between, in those 4 weeks of camp, they see something from James Bradberry that convinces him that he can be a really impactful player at like you said, at either an interior coverage position, a safety position, which is a position he's never played, Mike. So we're talking about real, what sort of term I'm looking for? We're talking about a real uphill battle for James Bradberry in that regard.
Well, we've seen obviously some corners later in their career make that transition. These were elite athlete kind of guys, though. You're talking about some of the best corners that made that switch. In your mind, does anybody say, any scouts or anybody you talk to, look at James Bradberry and say he profiles as that kind of guy that can make that transition from corner to safety? Or is this more that, hey, that room's so crowded, let's just see if it works, and if it doesn't, then we'll have to make a decision?
Yeah, not once has it ever come up to me that James Bradberry, could see some years at safety. He has been a physical player throughout his career, but mostly a zone player, not necessarily a press man type player. We've seen the Rod Woodsons do it, the Charles Woodsons. I also would say there's probably been so many experiments of guys trying to move from corner to safety that didn't work out that we don't focus on, so that when we only focus on the guys who did it and did it well, we make it seem like the door is open for anybody to do it. But I'm sure if you gave me enough time, I could research a bunch of corners who tried to move to safety, and it just did not work out well for them.
Yeah, James Bradberry, we'll see. Another guy you talked about in his contract was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and you said on the podcast, when you slice it up, it's a 1-year deal disguised as a 3-year deal. And I guess, if he doesn't play well this year, there's a possibility he could be gone, and I guess that could keep Bradberry, if you're watching him this year, hey, can he play some safety in the event that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gets hurt, as he has the last couple of years? You just keep him around as a depth piece and hope that somewhere along this season he kind of catches on. Is that the scenario that might work the best?
Yeah, I don't know if there's some kind of tie between James Bradberry, let's try him out there in case C.J. Gardner-Johnson doesn't play well or get hurt. But I do believe, I think it's very fair to say, hey, you look at the contract structure where almost all of the guaranteed money in C.J. Gardner-Johnson's deal is year 1 and only a little bit of year 2. And we know the Eagles are not afraid to take a dead money cap that's small. Then it really is a 1-year deal for C.J. So you said, it's important that he plays well to see the end of it. And I would say also stay healthy, because that's really been the biggest issue for him. He didn't stay healthy even last year. He didn't stay healthy the year before that. I mean,
he missed almost the whole season last year.
Yeah, I think he only played 4 games last year. So if I'm not, and that includes the playoffs, I believe. So this is a guy who sort of Avonte Maddox like, just availability can be a real problem.
Well,
he only played two regular season games last year.
So what's more likely then, that Bradbury, because he's a veteran and the money that he's owed, they keep, or that they keep some of these younger guys that, obviously are younger and cheaper, but you have to take the hit with Bradbury?
Yeah, I have to think that if younger guys are worth keeping, the Eagles are going to keep them, because you look at what they've done in the secondary. They've brought in Quinyon Mitchell, right? They brought in Cooper DeJean. They know that they needed to get younger in that area. They've watched Reed Blankenship develop, and they want to see how he does in year 3. But there's really not a safety other than Sidney Brown, who's really, coming back from an injury, that I think is going to really wow them. Tristan McCullum, we're talking about Andre Sam, Mekhi Garner. These guys would have to be really, really good for them to make it over Bradbury, but for them to keep Howie Roseman from going to the free agency or going to the trade market to try to upgrade the position.
Jeff Mosher, Football for the Inside the Birds podcast. These guys broke down a lot of the different contracts that the Eagles have on the roster right now. One of the things we were talking about, as we now know when training camp starts, some of the things we're looking for at camp, Saquon Barkley, I think it's going to be fascinating to see what Kellen Moore does there. We were breaking down the Zeke Elliott years with Kellen Moore. 300 carries the 1 year, but he caught the ball over 50 times all 3 seasons with Kellen Moore. So I know we laugh all the time about running backs catching the ball in this offense, but 95% offense, brand new. Is this the year the running back catches the ball more out of the backfield? But 300 carries Zeke Elliott had. Do you see Barkley being that kind of guy?
Yeah, I just, no, I don't really see this offense being that kind of a carbon copy or a clone, because this offense has A.J. Brown, and this offense has Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, and the quarterback's making, an ungodly amount of money. Obviously they would love to run the ball effectively, and with Saquon Barkley, they have what they believe is a guy who can fit that scheme that they're going to carve up and give them big explosive plays. They want to be an explosive play offense, like most offensive coaches do, most teams do. The Eagles emphasize explosive plays. You hear Nick Sirianni say, our mission is to win the explosive play battle, create more, give up fewer. That's why, we play certain types of zones. That's why we play 2 deep a lot, and that's why we look for players who we think can turn short gains into big gains. And they have those kind of players, and Saquon can be one of them, but I don't see them being sort of what the Cowboys are and were in those Kellen Moore / Mike McCarthy years, which is like almost like a 50-50 marriage of the pass to the run, where one plays off of another.
Yeah, the other guy would be Dallas Goedert. We were kind of looking at the tight end situation in L.A., Dallas, and you would think that usage might go up as well. You're just trying to figure out how they get him more involved, because as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we always hear about Goedert and the explosion that he can bring to the offense. But do we get to that point that he just is what he is, or can they get more from him in a better offense?
Well, I think they can. I do think that the best we've seen of Dallas Goedert, which I think you go to 2 years ago, he was on pace for 1,000 yards. He missed a few games, which he typically does a few years. But, 2 years ago, he had 702 yards in 12 games. So that was pretty good. He was averaging like 60 yards a game. So if you, take the 5 games you missed, give him 6, that's 300 extra yards. He's on pace for 1,000.
Yeah.
So but I also think, Mike, that those years that even when he's good, you see what he is. He's a guy who is a good yards after catch, yards after contact receiver, knows how to sit in the soft spots of his zone, knows how to turn upfield after the catch, make plays, is a tough player, not necessarily the greatest route runner, struggles at times getting off man press coverage. When you go up against the really good defenses, he can't shake a guy the way Zach Ertz used to be able to with route running and precision. He's just a different kind of tight end that way. But what he gives you is the ability to make big plays happen after the catch.
Yeah, I know Goedert, it's tough because he's between the 2 receivers on this team, but you wonder if he can, as you mentioned, he was on pace for 1,000 yards with those 2 guys, if he can be that legit third guy to get 1,000 yards in this offense. I'm really intrigued to see how Moore uses him differently, though. I thought they wasted him essentially last year when he was healthy.
Yeah, well, the whole offense got got messed up there at the end. Because he was on, I do remember the first 5 games of the year. You're right that we were saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" Because he seemed to just have his timing with Jalen Hurts was off last year for quite a bit. Starting against New England, where he had 0 catches, 0 yards, and just 1 target, and then it got a little better the next 2 games: 6 catches for 22, 5 for 41. But we really didn't see a Goddard-like game until week 5, and he had 117 yards against the Rams. And even then, it went back to sort of sporadic play after that. He only had 3 games last year where he had 70 or more yards, which is not the Dallas Goedert that we think of.
No, and of course, the one thing with the Goddard situation is he's the guy. There is nobody else in that room as of June 17th as we have this conversation. I don't know that the backups in this room yet or at this point.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there's certainly a lot of names: Grant Calcaterra and Albert O and E.J. Jenkins.
Albert O's an interesting one for the people out there. They got him from Denver last year. He had a little run in Denver for about 4 or 5 weeks and was like a big, physical, fast guy. And I remember that year, people like fantasy guys would be like, go out and get this guy. And they gave up on him. The Eagles didn't use him at all last year. But is he legitimately in the mix for this, with this team?
Well, he's a good example, Mike, of when we talk about, sometimes people get excited about players that they heard of that had like a big stretch or, oh, we got this guy. What a steal. And then you're reminded that he was available for a reason, right? So, and I'm not trying to downplay or disparage Albert O. It was an entirely new offense last year, and then it wasn't a very good offense by the second half of the year. So you'd like to think there's a nice clean slate and that he'll have some opportunities to really impress himself with a guy like Kellen Moore, who has made the tight end an important part of his offense where he's been in Dallas and L.A. Maybe not a central part of his offense, but a big enough part where Alberto could impress to get the number 2 job. He obviously has to improve the blocking element of his game if he wants to be a wide tight end, but he can certainly make it as the number 3 tight end, more of a flex pass-catching tight end.
That'll be interesting to see what happens there if the Eagles do make another move between now. Training camp July 23rd. That was announced today. Also, single game tickets go on sale tomorrow, 10 a.m. I would have to imagine you got to set your alarm and get in right at 10 a.m. Otherwise, you're pretty much going to be left out. And the open practice at the Link will be August 1st. It's Thursday, August 1st will be the first one there. We know that. Let me ask you this question in terms of the 2 retirees, Kelce, Fletcher Cox. Which spot are you more confident that they could fill and not have problems? The Kelce center spot or the Fletcher defensive tackle spot?
I'm going to say the Fletcher defensive tackle spot. Not an easy choice by any stretch of the means, but I mean, they have a talent in Jalen Carter who should be able to just take the baton and run with it as long as he keeps his head on straight. The talent is obviously there, and not to take anything away from the position itself, but it's like, go get quarterback, right? I mean, stop run, tackle ball carrier, go get quarterback. When you're talking about replacing Kelce, it ain't just go block guy in front of you. It's read defense, call out blitz, flip play, double team this guy, move up to that guy. I mean, there's a whole lot more than just go do this one thing or go do these 2 things. There's a lot to it. And again, I'm not taking anything away. There's a mental part to every single position on the field. I'm just saying center is like the brains of the O-line and the offense. And a guy here did it for 12 years as good as anybody has ever done it. And that's just tough.
Hey, man, I agree that I don't want to say we're taking it for granted, but the whole offensive line in general, the Eagles, like Eagles fans are so used to having all 5 guys being competent. You might have a spot or 2 that's not what you're used to, but that's the way most teams operate. They have 1 or 2 guys that are good or really good, and then you have some weaknesses. The Eagles have been blessed with 5 guys for a run here.
Yeah, they've done a great job of drafting and developing talent, bringing in a guy a long time ago like Jason Peters through a trade. They've done an excellent job of prioritizing the offensive line and reaping the benefits of that, while the rest of the league, not the rest, but many teams in the league don't. And unfortunately for them, they reap the benefits of that. But last year, Mike, was the first time in a while, right, when you just had a new right guard, that suddenly things started to look a little bit different. A couple guys getting older, just, in general. And and you started to say, maybe this might not be the number one O-line. It might be 3, might be 4. It's still good, but there were some games like the Jets game where they just got their asses kicked.
Yeah.
And there were times against the Patriots in the season opener, they got their asses kicked too. So it wasn't often, but now that you've got the new center and the new right guard, I think the Eagles do have to sort of reprove themselves as at least to be, if they want to be mentioned top 3, they got to go out there and get it. It's not going to just be reputation.
We look at the right guard spot. Is it a rite of passage that Tyler Steen wins that job? Certainly not. But I don't know that there is I guess Mekhi Becton would be the most intriguing challenger of that lot as we're counting down to training camp about a month or so away. That one will be one definitely to keep an eye on. Can Mekhi Becton, between now and then, get himself up to speed to be a serviceable NFL right guard?
Yeah, I mean, they still want him to be a little, he's trimmer, but they still got to be a little bit more trim. And then he's got to really be able to lock down the fine parts of that position to really compete there with it.
All right, Jeff Mosher, camp, July 23rd. I don't want to rush you, but enjoy your summer. We'll have plenty more football conversations between now and then. And, of course, we'll see you July 23rd right there, ready to go, man. 1 month and less than a week away.
Feels like longer to me, so I'll just stick. That's my story, and I'm going to stick with
it. When that date came out today, I was floored. I couldn't believe. I was like, "That's like a month from now."
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you.
See you.
All right, Jeff Mosher, everybody from the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course, you can get that on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds, and of course, their YouTube channel has the Football at 4 if you want to miss any of the Football at 4s, you can always check it out on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. When I saw that date come out, I got excited, like football. I don't know. Does anybody out there feel like football is like right there? Or are you just so into this Philly season right now? By the way, speaking of the Phillies, Edmundo Sosa out taking some reps in left field today, which they did talk about, right? Rob Thompson said that he might get some, and by the way, we talked about this earlier with Bob Wankel. Last year they had Sosa playing some left field, like down in spring training. So I would think, and by the way, Kyle Schwarber was also out in left field today getting some fly balls, because if David Dahl can't hit, and you can't just, it's not a charity here. You don't have to keep saying here because you're left-handed. You might have to see Kyle Schwarber play some left field against right-handed pitching.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, Mike. There's no guarantee that Trey Turner is starting at shortstop every game moving forward. They might give him some DH days. You and Bob talked about this an hour ago. So maybe they tell Schwarber, look, man, you got to play some days in left field while Turner gets up to speed here.
Yeah, I would think that you will see a little bit more of Schwarber having to go back to the outfield. But the question goes back to, you're now sacrificing some of your defense. Right. And keep in mind, your pitching staff has been great. How much of that, though, has been because of how your defense has been improved?
Right. The conversation we were having is that, remember 2 years ago, man, this outfield defense stinks. Well, this year, the defense is fine, but the offense is not there. So, which is more important, Mike? The defense and the outfield are getting the bats going.
Coming up, Knicks Nuggets are in the house. Nick Earnshaw's back. He was in Baltimore this weekend. Also, news on Charles Barkley's future. We have that still to come. Plus, we're going to go a little Sixers. Joel Embiid, last night. Was it Saturday night? What night was that? Was it last night?
It was actually Friday.
Friday night. Man, that weekend was...
Well, you were so busy watching the Phillies in Baltimore.
It was Friday night. Joel Embiid was at the NBA Finals. Hold off the jokes. The only way he's going to get to the finals, buying a ticket. I get it.
I've seen those jokes.
But he made an appearance unscheduled. The impact of that. Paul Hudrick tonight at 5 o'clock. Talks a little Sixers as we get ready for the offseason, which could be starting tomorrow if the Celtics win tonight. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 428 Sports Bash, live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and, of course, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. Knicks Nuggets with Nick Earnshaw. They're brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. A lot of Phillies news, training camp, dates have been announced. Joel Embiid made an impromptu visit to the ESPN pregame show the other day. Or was it halftime? I don't remember when. But they found Joel at the finals the other day. Nick Earnshaw is here, back from Baltimore, where the Phillies lost 2 out of 3, but they are finally back home. What's up, Nick Earnshaw?
What's going on, Mike? Nice to see you once again today. Yeah, I guess I went to the better game of the 3, right? They won. It did rain, so that was a negative. But
you stayed the whole time?
Was great. We left during the rain. My buddy was not feeling great. I have an excuse. I would have stayed. The co-host was not feeling great. He was under the weather the entire time anyway. So I was like, we got to get rolling. I had to be back for the show in the morning. So I didn't get back until like 2:30 in the morning. Made it back down to Atlantic City for the the locker room on Saturday. So we had to make the call to head out there in the rain delay, unfortunately.
All right. I guess that's acceptable. It was a late night, though. It was a late night, for to have to go down and drive back. But you missed my man Kirkering got the win.
He did. But it was a fun atmosphere, to say the least. Saw Frank Close down there, so get to see him. So it was great seeing him on Friday night.
Now, was he randomly sitting like 2 rows behind you? Was that random?
Yeah, so we met up during like one of the in between innings, and we got talking for a little while and grabbed some food, whatever. And then all of a sudden, a couple times later, like innings later, I just hear my name being yelled out, and he's a couple rows behind me. It was fantastic. So he was spawning all over the whole stadium.
What are the chances? All right.
It was great. All right. Nugget number 1. Got to start with the Phillies here. With Johan Rojas being sent down, news of the day, Trey Turner gets off of the IL. He is reinstated. Rojas, they had to make the decision to send him down. And honestly, I think it is for the best, and it's the right move for the Phillies at this point. Because you have to remember, Dahl and Pache would have most likely been claimed off of waivers if they sent one of those 2 guys down. So it was basically between Pache, Dahl, and Rojas to send down. Rojas, you get to keep. He's not going on waivers if you send him down to AAA. So that's one aspect to this. Also, obviously, the offense just has not been there. They've given him every opportunity to start the season, given him plenty of at-bats. And if you look at the numbers, his OPS is 199th out of 200 major leaguers with 190 plate appearances. So not great. We know he struggled at the dish. Hasn't had, I think it's an extra base hit since the early part of May 10th or something. I think it's the exact date. So this is the right move for the Phillies, Mike, in my opinion. But this shows that they will be in the market for an outfield bat. I know Mundo Sosa's out there taking reps in left field. I've had that discussion before with you and with Josh plenty of times, and on Saturdays with Billy. But this is the right move for the Phillies to move Rojas down to AAA, give him some more at-bats. He struggled mightily on the base pass, too. So it's like he's having trouble with the baseball IQ part of it as well. So I think this is the right move. Mike, what say you with the Rojas stuff here?
2 things. 1, I think it's a fair move. I have no problem with them making this decision. Now, the question would be, is he done? Like, do you bring him back? Is he still in your plans? Like, do you view him as the center fielder in the playoffs for this team, and that they just wanted to evaluate Pache more and Dahl more? Because my answer would be, do you really look at David Dahl as a guy who's on your playoff roster? Do you really look at Pache as a guy that can help you? Or are you doing more damage to Rojas? Now, I'm not saying that they are, but do you view any of those guys as playoff helps? Pache, Dahl? Now you got 2 platoons in the outfield, and I don't know that any of those platoons are any good. I mean, do I want to see David Dahl hit? He's going to play a majority of the time against, you're going to face right-handed pitching probably 75% of the time. So you're going to see a lot of David Dahl all of a sudden. I don't know that that's like they made it like David Dahl was so important that they couldn't lose him. Yeah. Whereas you had the chance to keep Dahl at the start of the year and move Rojas down to the minors. They didn't do that. So why now? I don't know. That to me is a little befuddling. I'm not saying that Rojas played well enough to earn the spot, but why didn't you make this move in spring training? Because now you're messing with Rojas. He's 23 years old. Why sending me back down? What did I do wrong? I've been one of the most productive guys in this outfit. I'm hitting 235. You got this guy hitting 209, and this guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's actually hitting better than Merrifield. I think Dahl is only at 223 right now. So
yeah, no, I hear where you're coming. I hear where you're coming from. They wanted to give him as many at bats as possible. They wanted to give him a huge chance to earn the center field spot and become an everyday type guy because of the glove, right? Because of how good he is defensively. And defensively, he's taken a step back a little bit too. He hasn't been the all-world defender that he was last year. So that's another reason they're sending him down, because the glove hasn't saved him either this year. So
that said, again, I don't have a problem with this, but your outfield defense was one of the reasons. Keep in mind, your pitching's been great, right, but how much of that is because you had Rojas in center and Marsh playing left? Now, Marsh is a lesser center fielder than Rojas is, and now your left fielders are both lesser than Marsh was. So now your outfield defense becomes lesser.
It takes a step back. It for sure does. And that's going to move me to my next point, nugget number 2. They're going to be in the market for a bat. An outfield bat. This is a telltale sign that they're going to go after a bat. And we've heard the reports over and over and over again that this is their number one concern and what they want to do at the deadline. So I'm going to give you 3 names other than Robert that we've heard over the past couple of weeks, kind of as the buzz around the trade deadline and the Phillies have been kind of ramping up. All right. Taylor Ward, Los Angeles Angels. That's a name to watch for. Batting .240 on the year, 36 RBIs, up there in RBIs in Major League Baseball. He is team control after 2 years. That's one name to watch for, Mike. I'll give you a second name. I'll give you 3 here. Dalton Varsho is a name to watch for as well from the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, he has struggled a little bit offensively to start the year, but his last 15 games, he's batting .277 and has a home run, has been much better at the plate, much more disciplined at the dish. His on-base percentage is back up over 300 at .333 and a .532 slugging. So he's slugging at a much better clip over his last 15 games. So if he starts to get hot, and Toronto's kind of in limbo right now with that division, that's a name to watch. And then number 3, my guy from Fansided brought this name to my attention. We've heard about Mason Miller, right? Oakland A's closer, a name out of the bullpen the Phillies could be interested in. Outfielder as well as DH Brent Rooker, all-star last year, 30 home runs, .253 average this year. He had 30 home runs last year, 13 as of right now, and he has team control through 2027. So those are 3 other outfield names you could watch for that are kind of off of the radar than some of the top names like the Luis Roberts, Roberts of the world. So those are 3 names, Mike, to watch for, I would say, going to the deadline.
None of them do much for me.
They don't do enough?
No, I mean, Varsho's a guy, too, low batting average, low on base percentage, a lot of strikeouts, similar to what you have already. I mean, I feel like you're repetitive there, not to mention he bats left-handed. They got to find a guy that can hit right-handed for 2 reasons. 1, you are so left-handed. 2, Castellanos, who bats right-handed, is not giving you anywhere near the production he gave you last year. Now, Ward hits right-handed, but I don't think he's a guy that legitimately is going to hit in the middle of your lineup. I mean, none of those guys.
Are you willing to give up the Aiden Millers and the Crawfords of the world? Because that's what you're going to have to give up if you're going to go get a Robert or a guy like that. Because then there's other names out there like the Lane Thomases, the Roander Rosarinas. You won't have to give up as much. The guys I mentioned, you won't have to give up the top prospects of the world. And if you do the deal with the A's, the Rooker, and as well as Mason Miller, you give up a decent amount, but then you kill two birds with one stone, right? Like you get the outfielder help and the right-handed bat as well as Mason Miller. Maybe you do that deal with the A's and do a little blockbuster type thing out there in Oakland.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Aiden Miller, Crawford, those are two guys that I'd be hesitant to give up. If I could somehow talk. Now, Mick Abel's ERA is like 7 now.
Right,
I mean, he's been awful this year. So I don't know a team that's going to use him as the centerpiece of a deal.
Yeah.
We brought this up earlier with Bob Wankel. Is Johan Rojas now a guy that somebody would say, hey, we're interested there? We get plus defender, ton of speed. Maybe if he gets into our organization, we can work with him hitting the ball a little bit more. Maybe that helps open the door there. But the Mason Miller thing, I think he will probably take too much. I think it would probably be too much for the Phillies to give up to go get a bona fide legitimate closer. I'll tell you what, you were there Friday night, although you didn't stay for Kerkering. I thought Kerkering looked really good on Friday night. Yeah.
I just think they need to go out and add another arm as well. Maybe it's not a Mason Miller, but another piece to that bullpen will be good. But the outfield, the market right now isn't fantastic, right? Like, Robert's the only name really out there at the top of the list. You have Jazz Chisholm. He was voted, the most overrated player in baseball by his peers. So, there's not a ton of names.
Well, you got Kyle Tucker, maybe. We talked about him a little earlier today about the problem, though, with him is left-handed.
Yeah, he's left-handed, and I don't know if Houston's going to give up just yet. They're kind of hanging in the wings. That's the problem. The deadline is not till the 30th of July.
Well, another problem with the deadline is in the National League right now. We talked about this with Bob earlier. There's only 2 teams in the National League that are more than 2 games out of the wild card. The Mets are a game and a half out of the wild. A game and a half. So you're talking about almost every team in the National League is within 2 games of the wild card right now. So they're not ready to start busting their rosters up.
No, it's way too early. You have a month and a half till the deadline, and that's what that third wild card did. Now more teams think they're involved and think they can get to the postseason based upon that third wild card spot because you've opened the door for an extra team to be in the postseason. So I think you might see more names as teams kind of realize, yeah, we're not going to make a run this year. Teams I mentioned already, with the Brent Rooker stuff, he's with the Oakland A's. They're done. White Sox, not a team in contention. Taylor Ward, Angels, not a team in contention. These are teams that are already out of the mix. Now, what teams are going to start falling apart into July? They go on a run of we're not going to make it to the playoffs. Let's just sell. So I think you'll see more names probably come about. But as of right now, because everyone's kind of around that 500 mark, you're not seeing the names that you want to see out on the outfield.
What about Paul from Rehoboth Beach, who's a good listener, he texts in a lot, 609-403-0973. What about moving Harper back to the outfield, Bohm to first, Sosa to third? Is it time to start maybe getting creative and saying, you know what, Bryce, we're going to need you to go back and play the outfield? Is that even a possibility? I don't think it is. But is playing Bryce Harper at first base limiting this team's potential?
Well, it's definitely a good question because, you don't want to just juggle up everything and move everything around when you're one of the best teams in baseball. You're the second best record in all of the game, right? You're not going to go move guys all over the place and change up what's been working all season long. We know they have a little bit of an issue offensively in the outfield. A lot of it has to do with Castellanos not being as productive as he probably should be, right? So you go back to that question about Harper.
He's been terrible.
Yeah. So you go back to the question with Harper, right? why wouldn't you just kept Rhys Hoskins at that point, right? Like if you thought you were going to go into this point, Hoskins would have played first base and you would have moved Harper back into the outfield, but you made that decision. As an organization, you made the decision to make Bryce Harper the first baseman as a collective.
Well, there's two things there. There's two things there. There's two things there I think you have to examine. One, did you only view Castellanos as a right fielder? Did you only view Harper as a right fielder? Or, could you say to Castellanos, hey, now after getting settled into playing right field, we want you to go play left field? Was that something that they had to say, you know what? He's finally got to be somewhat competent of a right fielder. We don't want him to now have to go play left field. Same with Bryce Harper. Obviously, the Harper thing loomed all offseason. Somehow they came to the decision that he is now a first baseman, and he's played a great first base. Yes. But was it also part of it of, hey, we don't want to move Castellanos to left field. We also don't want to move Harper to left field.
Yeah, I think that has to be part of it because now he's kind of settled in right? Like you had him in left to start when he first got here when Bryce was playing right field. You now move him over to right field when Harper got hurt. Harper's now playing first base. Do you really want to change it up again with Castellanos in the outfield? You're already dealing with everything at the dish. Do you want to deal him with taking a step back defensively again in left? I think he'd be okay. He's not that great of a right fielder anyway. But, it's something that they made the decision to do. I think they can still go out and add another outfielder, which they want to, and they're going to have to. But this is what happens when Harper moves to first base. You have all these repercussions in the outfield, and that's why the offense hasn't looked as great from those guys who have been platooning as well as starting like the Castellanos of the world.
The team's been outstanding. They're in first place. They have a nice cushion, but they have the same issue at this time right now as they had at this time last year. But the only difference is this time last year they were playing from behind. Now they're playing out in front, but they still have the same problem.
Yep, it's the same exact problem as before. But listen, they're in first place. They're in first place. They're going to have to add at the deadline for sure in the bullpen as well as in the outfield now. Upgrade a little bit, give themselves another right-handed bat. I think they'll be okay. But they're still in first. They're now coming back home. And by the way, they've had a gauntlet of a schedule since London, coming back to Boston, barely having any days off, going straight to Baltimore, and then not having a day off today and playing against San Diego back home. It's been a gauntlet of a schedule since they came back from London.
Yeah, no, the schedule's done them no favors. There's no question about it, but you got to push through. This is what it is.
Yep. And the All-Star break's coming up, so they'll be back. All right. Nugget number 3, going to switch gears, go to the 97.3 ESPN question of the day regarding the Philadelphia Eagles. Mike, we asked the listeners out there, 609-403-0973, what is the biggest storyline heading into Eagles training camp? And I think the number one storyline has to be the coaching, Mike. Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio, what are you going to get out of them? I think that's the number one storyline going into the season, no doubt about it.
I would agree to some extent. I think that is the top story for this reason. They went to the Super Bowl. They had strong coordinators. They made the determination in this offseason that it wasn't the head coach that was the problem, that they needed stronger people around the head coach. So they went and got 2 guys who have had that position. Last year, they went with 2 guys who really had no experience. Sean Desai was a coordinator for 1 year. And that was a couple of years ago, and Brian Johnson had never been an NFL coordinator. So I think they saw what was the formula to get us to the Super Bowl. We have a leader in Nick Sirianni who these players really like playing for, but he had strong coaches around him. So they're going back to that formula. So I think that is definitely right up at the top of stories. July 23rd, what will these coordinators and the impact that they will have on this team?
Yeah, I think that's the number one, no doubt, because we saw how stale the offense was last year with Brian Johnson, right? Kellen Moore hopefully can bring a little more creativity to the offense. Vic Fangio, and this kind of goes along with another storyline, the young Bulldogs development on the defensive side with all those young guys, the Nolan Smiths of the world, the Kobe Deans, Jalen Carters, Jordan Davis. How is Vic Fangio going to help develop these young players from Georgia who a majority of the defense is part of? So I think that's another story on looking at some of these young players on defense because they are a very, very young defense right now. Quinyon Mitchell drafted in the first round. Cooper DeJean in the second round. Secondary is good, very young, as well as the defensive line. What's the pressure going to look like? What's the pass rush going to look like this year? A lot of onus is on the young guys, with guys retiring as well. And it goes line. Third storyline would be Kelsey being gone, right? Like, that's another aspect of this. They're getting younger, especially on defense. What is it going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, the defense is going to have a lot. I mean,
yep.
Battles everywhere. That cornerback room, we know. What's the safety situation going to look like? Is it going to be Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship? Is Sidney Brown healthy and ready to be a part of that? Is James Bradbury actually going to be in play for a safety job out there? So there's so many stories on the defensive side of the ball, but a lot of that goes back to the coordinator, Vic Fangio, and how he wants to operate the defense this year. But not to mention Bryce Huff. What kind of impact will he have? He's got to replace Reddick.
Yeah, and Reddick, has Reddick even showed up to camp yet in New York? Like, I don't think he's even shown up. So he'd probably have more impact as of right now, Bryce Huff already than Hassan Reddick has with his new team. So that's pretty funny to see. All right, nugget number 4, real quick. You and Josh were talking about it right before this segment. Podcast P and Joel Embiid on NBA Countdown. They were on the pregame show on Friday night. I was getting the updates while I was in Baltimore and just rolling my eyes. Listen, love seeing Joel Embiid out there. I don't know if I love seeing him touch Larry O'Brien before, even playing a game in an Eastern Conference Final, let alone an NBA final. But him making the little eye movement towards Paul George on the NBA Countdown, it doesn't get me excited, Mike. I can't lie. It didn't get me excited. I wasn't thrilled about it. I'm mentally preparing now for Paul George to be a 76er.
Well, if Embiid's okay with it, are you?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm not. No, I don't care.
Have you ever seen Embiid so excited about the potential of somebody playing with him? I don't know that I have before.
I feel like I have. I mean, James Harden gifted this guy a watch before a playoff game. So when he won the MVP, he's been excited before with having guys come here. Paul George just doesn't do it for me. The age scares me. The amount of money they're going to give him at his age is very concerning. And, Paul George has never won anything either. He's literally never been anywhere. He hasn't been in an NBA Finals. So it's very concerning to me that they're probably going to do the Paul George signing thing. We'll see. Now, does that count as tampering with Embiid did with the eye movement? Is that tampering, Mike? I don't know. I mean, could it be considered? The Sixers always get fined or draft picks taken away for tampering. I mean, maybe they'll classify that as tampering.
Good question. Don't know, because apparently Tim Bontemps saw Joel in like the barrel.
Wendy reported that, right?
Yeah, that he saw him like down in the whatever, down underneath of the Dallas's stadium, and said, "Hey, do you want to go on the set?" And Joel was like, "Yeah, sure, yeah." Like, Paul George is up there. Okay, I'm in. So. There you go.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm not in love with the whole idea of Paul George coming to the Sixers. I don't know if it's a fit.
I'm not a huge Paul George guy, or the whole get that guy now, the aging player, but they have to find a guy with the timeline matching Joel Embiid. That's the problem. So
that's the issue.
The question would be, and I'll ask this question in this way, and Paul Hudrick's going to join us in 10 minutes. If you had Paul George instead of Tobias Harris, would you have beat the Knicks?
That's a good question.
I think you probably would have.
Yeah. How healthy is Paul George? That's another question. He's had injury problems before. Now he's getting another year older. Something to watch for. But that's my fourth and final nugget for you today, Mike. A lot of fun. We're going to have a fun one tomorrow, too.
All right. There you go. Knicks Nuggets, of course, back tomorrow here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Nick.
All right, Mike. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right, there goes Nick Earnshaw. Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Paul Hudrick from Liberty Ballers. You just heard, we were talking a little Embiid. He showed up at the NBA Finals. What are the scenarios? Because if the Celtics win tonight, teams can start signing their own free agents tomorrow. So, do the Sixers act quickly on that? Nick Batum, Kelly Oubre, Kyle Lowry, and others. We'll talk to Paul Hudrick coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live to get involved. Paul Hudrick from Liberty Ballers stops by. Coming up next here on the Sports Bash.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
I can't stand them. I hate Boston. Great city, great fans. Obviously they got some great players, but he hurts me a lot. So hopefully, this offseason we find a way to get better and, add some pieces.
Joel Embiid Friday night at the finals. He was almost giddy sitting next to Paul George. And then Kendrick Perkins said, I think the final piece might be right next to you over there. The Celtics win tonight. The NBA offseason begins. You can start signing back your own free agents. We'll take a look at the offseason plan, including Joel's comments and how realistic Paul George feels. I feel like we've heard this name for like 3 years now. So we'll ask another Paul. Paul Hudrick from Liberty Ballers is back as the Sixers offseason is about to get underway. The draft is 2 weeks from now, and then, of course, free agency will begin, and we'll take a look at all of it now with Paul Hudrick from Liberty Ballers is back here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. What's up, Paul?
Mike, I'm doing great, man. Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, man. It's, Joel Embiid out of the woodworks was at an NBA Finals game the other night. They found him down in the barrels of the Dallas arena. Hey, you want to go sit next to Paul George and chew it up a little bit? He seemed giddy about it. What do you read into Joel's happiness of being there with Paul George?
Well, it turns out it was his idea, Mike, as Tim Bontemps from ESPN reported that Joel Embiid was just there, right? Like he was there with Josh Harris just to watch the game. He found out that Paul George was going to be on NBA Countdown. I said, let me hop on NBA Countdown. And listen, anyone who's covered Joel Embiid over the years, for him to put himself out there and say, oh, no, I want to go on NBA Countdown, that's purposeful. Like, that's a huge deal. This is a guy that doesn't always, he takes care of his obligations for the most part, but isn't always the most kindest and cuddly with the media. So for him to go out there and say, no, Paul George is here, I want to go on there. Very purposeful stuff from him. And Mike, you and I have discussed it often. He's not a big recruiter. It's not what he's done over the years. He's generally taken a stance of, I let the front office do their thing. I'm going to do my thing. That was not the case on Friday night. That was on public television, him saying to Paul George, we want you, and that is him saying to Daryl Morey, we want him. And Daryl Morey, I think, is saying say less in that department because I think it's very clear he is their number one choice.
Yeah, we've heard his name so much. I mean, it seems like his name has been reported with the team based on, a couple of factors. Is it, Paul, the cap space and it just makes sense? Or is there a relationship there that says, hey, no, these two guys would want to play with each other?
All the above, I think. And then I would also add, I'll get started with the first thing you talked about. As far as free agency goes, Paul George is probably, if he does change teams, Paul George will be the best player in this offseason to change teams, most likely. I think LeBron James goes back to the Lakers. I don't think Donovan Mitchell's going anywhere. I'm not sure Jimmy Butler is going anywhere. So when you factor that in, Paul George is going to be the best possible player to leave a team, perhaps. So that's part of it. The second thing you touched on, absolutely, there is clearly a connection with Paul George and Joel Embiid. That Friday night, again, was pretty clearly Joel Embiid saying, I think Paul George could absolutely be that missing piece for our franchise. Would love to have him here. A clip has been passed around, from earlier this season where Paul George on his own podcast just gushing over Joel Embiid, talking about how he thinks Joel Embiid is this generation Shaquille O'Neal. That is not small praise, right? I mean, that's a big deal for a guy like that to say something like that. Said that they've built a relationship from, talking at All-Star games and they have a friendship. So that is very real too. The last thing I would say, Mike, is, and I'm sure we'll get into it. And some people who just really are out on Paul George for whatever reasons they have, but you will not find a cleaner on-court fit for what they need when you're talking about Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, than Paul George, who is a big, playmaking, two-way wing. That took 8 threes a game last year and made 41%. That alone, Mike, is worth its weight in gold, not factoring in that he can play defense, that he can create off the dribble, that he can get his own shot. I know the playoff record is spotty, whatever, but he's had some big playoff games.
Yeah.
So when you factor all that in, I think on court, he's a terrific fit with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid.
All right, there's a lot there. Because one, yes, his playoff, when he was in Indiana, he was the guy. Here he would be the third guy. The Clippers thing, all right, he's been in and out of the lineup. He's had some injury issues. Why do you feel that there is this, I'm not all that excited about Paul George? Because you seem to think that this would be the right fit and would be the perfect guy between Maxey and Embiid.
Well, to clarify, there is no such thing as a perfect basketball player. No matter, because my thing is always this, Mike. If you're a Sixers fan and you're saying to me you don't want Paul George, give me your alternative. Who do you want? You're probably not getting LeBron James. Jimmy Butler. Okay, you want to say you want Jimmy Butler over Paul George? Okay, I can go along with that. The issue is Pat Riley is going to turn Daryl Morey upside down and shake all the contents out of his pockets out for you to get Jimmy Butler here. And then on top of that, at 35 years old, you're going to have to give him a max extension. With Paul George, you don't have to do that. It's cut and dry. You sign him, it's done. And then you go beyond that. You're not getting Donovan Mitchell. It seems very clear Donovan Mitchell is in Cleveland. So my thing is, if you're a Sixers fan and you do not want Paul George here, give me your alternative. What player do you want? You can tell me about role players. And look, I love, there's certain guys I love. I love Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You tell me that your idea is you want to sign Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and I don't know, Malik Monk. Sure, that's okay, but Paul George would be better. It's a better option. And as you already referenced, he is going to be the third guy in the pecking order here. It is clearly Joel, it is clearly Tyrese, and then it is Paul George. And I just think about that series alone against the Knicks. If you simply swap out Paul George with Tobias Harris, this team's in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not close. They are there. They are an Eastern Conference Finals team. If you just simply swap those two players out, not accounting for how much better Paul George is than Tobias Harris. So, look, it's an uphill battle. They're going to have to beat the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics look like a juggernaut, and they're going to mostly be running it back next year. But when you talk about the rest of the East, if you add Paul George to this mix and then fill out the roster, I like them over every other team in the East other than the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, Paul Hunter from Liberty Ballers is with us. Obviously, and it's the cleanest. You can just sign him. You don't have to make a trade like you would for Jimmy Butler and some of the other names that have been out there. But he is the highest. LeBron obviously would be the highest profile free agent if he hits free agency. But he would be the highest profile free agent that would be available tomorrow if free agency started. He is a unrestricted free agent. But, Embiid going out there and being giddy like that and just being like, hey, we can make add some pieces. I mean, that was pretty unbelievable to see that. And you wonder like how this, Olympic thing will kind of help Joel and maybe add to that.
Yeah, I think too, Mike, everyone kind of, we're all humans, right? We all grow, we all mature at different times, different things happen. I think if you're objective and you look at Joel Embiid, I don't know how you can't see the growth as a person, as a basketball player this guy has made over his time here. Clearly has, spent more time caring about his physical fitness and his health. Now, look, he tears his meniscus. What are you going to do? He tears his meniscus. But it was clear when he came back, he was in as good a shape as he was going to possibly get in, all things considered. We've all seen what happens in the past when Joel Embiid comes back from injuries and he's not in shape. It hasn't gone well. He scored 50 points in a playoff game. I mean, this is a thing that and the game 6, the game in which they were eliminated, Joel Embiid was great in that game. He was awesome in that game. It was Tyrese Maxey who clearly saved their season in game 5. He struggled in game 6. But I say all that to say, there is a maturation that we've seen from Joel Embiid throughout the years. And I think that is another sign of it, of like, instead of just saying like, it's the front office's job, it's not my. No, Joel, like, you are the franchise player, you are the star, you are the MVP of the league at one point. It's your job too to go out there and make these guys want to come here and to recruit them. That's part of the deal when you are a star, when you are a franchise player. That comes with the territory. So I think he's recognizing that as well. That's part of it. And yeah, I think the Olympics thing is absolute. Look, he's playing with some of the, not just the greatest players in the sport currently, some of the greatest players to ever play the game. When you're talking about LeBron James, Steph Curry, like, absolutely getting the chance to rub elbows with those guys, see kind of what they do behind the scenes, what makes them tick. I think it's a totally invaluable experience for Joel Embiid. He's going to learn so much. People that worry about health and injuries, like, look, he's not going up against the Boston Celtics every night. There's going to be some countries that they're just going to completely dominate and obliterate, and he's going to play like 20 minutes a night. So let's kind of curb ourselves with some of those concerns. I get him to an extent, but I think he'll be fine. I think absolutely it is a net positive, that experience for him to go to Paris and go to the Olympics.
All right, let's look at some of the other potentials out there. Let's go with OG Anunoby, who obviously played for Nick Nurse. If they could get him, would you be more excited about that fit and adding OG, a younger player, or Paul George?
Still Paul George. And that's, I love OG Anunoby's game. I think he'd be a hell of a fit. If they wind up not being able to land Paul George and Anunoby's the guy instead, that's a pretty good consolation prize in my book, because, as you mentioned, he is younger. Talk about two ways. I mean, he's definitely a more impactful defender than Paul George is at his age. The offense, he can fade into the background sometimes, Anunoby, but at the same time, we saw it against the Sixers. He hit some big shots. He made some big plays. He's smart. He's capable offensively. I think there's maybe more there, and I don't know, maybe Nick Nurse can get that more out of him to make him more of like a third offensive piece. But like, as far as defensive impact goes, you're not going to find too many wings that are more impactful than an OG Anunoby. Then the other thing is, a lot of people have expressed concerns about Paul George's age and his injury history. OG Anunoby's got plenty of injury issues in his past, so that would be a pretty big concern as well. But with all that said, Anunoby as a guy that if Paul George, if that doesn't work out, Anunoby would be a fantastic fit here. I still think he winds up back with the Knicks one way or another. I don't blame Daryl Morey and the Sixers for making sure that price gets nice and high for the Knicks by putting this out there, that they would be interested in him. But at the same time, I do think ultimately, considering what New York gave up to get him, how well he fit there, I think he winds up staying in New York.
Where would you be with Klay Thompson?
That's a tough one. I wouldn't be I think one idea that was kind of intriguing, I think Jake Fisher from Yahoo put this out there, is like all the balloon contract ideas, right? Like a balloon contract, meaning a high salary but low term. So like maybe like a 1+1 deal at like 20-ish million or something like that. And then what that does is too, so let's say Jimmy Butler makes the situation in Miami a nightmare, and by the deadline he's available, you could use those contracts, shift into Miami along with your draft picks, and make that work. But at the same time, so let's say theoretically, Mike, you get Klay Thompson and you get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on those balloon deals, $20-ish million. Look, that's a team that's probably better than last year's team, I would say, right? I mean, that's a team that you're replacing Klay Thompson and Caldwell-Pope, used instead of Tobias Harris. Those are the guys you're putting out there. That's two guys that can play both ends of the floor. They can both shoot. They're both playoff tested. They both won championships, multiple championships. So, it's kind of an interesting idea, that kind. And I guess that's where some people who don't necessarily love Paul George, that would be the direction they would go. But look, Klay Thompson is not the guy he once was. Flat out, he's not. But he can still shoot the basketball at a really high level. You think about the looks he would get, again, playing off of Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Same with a guy like Caldwell-Pope. I mean, that's four starters there when you talk about those guys. It's pretty high-level basketball players that, again, playoff-proven guys that have won. So that wouldn't be certainly my first choice. But if it winds up, getting down the list of choices, I don't think that's a bad one at all. And I think, Mike, this conversation, what this all illustrates is that there are options, right? Like if it doesn't work out, you have so many paths you can go down because of the flexibility you have, that I think everyone has to keep an open mind with, because say whatever you want about Daryl Morey. He hasn't gotten the team past the second round. There's no other way around it. But this guy is one of the most creative executives we've ever seen in this sport. And I've never known him to have this type of flexibility with a roster when you're talking about cap space, draft capital, and what he can do. So the possibilities are kind of endless here.
Yeah, and the creativity because of the flexibility. But does he want to straight trade? A straight sign a free agent, or a lot of people asking, hey, can you get creative and come up with a trade that people aren't really talking about outside of the aging veteran guys like a Jimmy Butler? We've heard Brandon Ingram's name, but is there somebody else? I know Lauri Markkanen's name seemingly fringing out there, but is there somebody else that you would be intrigued that maybe his name's not popping a whole heck of a lot, that they do have the ability to get creative with?
I'll start this off by saying I am I hate that I've become this, but I'm like a Brandon Ingram truther now, because I just think he's so much better than what people realize. And then on top of that, he's 26 years old, and you're giving him the Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is one hell of a coach. We've seen what he's done with guys, what he's gotten out of guys. We saw what he got out of Kelly Oubre this year. Imagine, him getting his hands on Brandon Ingram. I would be very intrigued by that. Some people would not. Fair enough. But I do think there's no reason to think that these guys would necessarily be available. But sure, I think Kevin O'Connor of The Athletic mentioned LaMelo Ball. Maybe Charlotte, if they draft a guard early, would they then be looking for a team that would take on LaMelo Ball? And a LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Maxey backcourt would be really, really intriguing. LaMelo, when he is healthy, he is awesome. He's a high volume 3-point shooter at a high level creator, can allow Maxey to play a lot of reps off the ball. You put him and Joel Embiid in a pick and roll, and good luck. I think he's an underrated defender. I think he's a better defender than what people give him credit for. He plays really hard on that end, actually. So if there is a way, if Charlotte is open to trading him, I think Daryl Morey would absolutely be interested in that. I seen the name Cade Cunningham thrown around at Detroit wants to kind of start over. Huh. It's intriguing. And especially with I think the thing with Cunningham is he's still on such a low salary, because he's still on his rookie deal. And you could still do a lot of things in free agency if you were to figure out a trade for him. I don't know if those guys are going to be available. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then? I'd say too, the other thing, when you're talking about flexibility and having all this, think about what the Celtics right now are coasting to an NBA Finals. When they made that Porzingis trade and that Holiday trade, the offseason was over, right? That was deep into the offseason. So I think it just shows you, if you position yourselves with star players and assets, you almost have to just kind of wait for your opportunity and wait for something to arise that makes sense for you. And the Celtics found two great deals, getting Porzingis and getting Holiday, that didn't seem like they were even going to be on the table. Think about it, Mike, if we were a year ago, if we were talking about the Celtics, you would have never thought Kristaps Porzingis would be a Celtic or that Jrue Holiday would be a Celtic, right? We never would have seen those things coming, but they happened. So I think, again, it just speaks to all that flexibility, and we just all have to keep an open mind for what could be out there. All
right, Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers. Let's go to who they have. Batum, Lowry, Oubre, DeAnthony Melton's an interesting one. Cameron Payne, Buddy Hield. In your mind, any of those going to be priorities?
I think they would love to get Batum back if he doesn't retire, and I think Batum was very happy here. I think he did enjoy his time. I think he loved playing with Joel Embiid. I think they have a clear relationship. Everyone loves Tyrese Maxey. That's just that he just kind of has that personality where he just kind of is a magnet, and people just gravitate towards that guy. So I think Batum would be a priority guy for sure. I think they would Lowry and Oubre too. I think they would love to have both of those guys back. I think they fit really well, not only on the court. I think they fit well in the locker room. When you're talking again about Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, I think they fit well with those personalities. I think Nick Nurse Nick Nurse clearly loves Kyle Lowry. I think him and Oubre kind of had an understanding and a good relationship. Oubre really gushed about Nurse at the end of the season. So it's just going to depend on what I think with Lowry. It's more possible because I can't see him getting more than maybe the minimum around the league. I'm curious to see what his market is. Same with Oubre. Like, I don't know. The market is clearly above the minimum for him, but I don't know what it is. So I think I'd have to see where he kind of think the Sixers are in the same boat, right? I think they kind of want to see where his market goes. Could they get him on that mid-level exception around $8 million, and then he could parlay that into a multi-year deal next offseason with the Sixers? We'll see. Hield, I'm not optimistic about Buddy Hield coming back. Because shooting gets paid and he can shoot. So I think someone will wind up maybe overpaying for him a little bit. Campaign, if he wants to come back on the minimum, I think he'd be a great guy as like a second or third ball handler. We saw the kind of juice he kind of brought in that Knicks series. He's a good basketball player, right? Like, for what he is just a solid NBA player. So again, if you can bring him back on the minimum, I think they'd have to be open to that. Beyond that, it's tough to know. Will Paul Reed be back? I don't know. That could be an interesting thing too with his, the non-guaranteed contract now. Could he be used in a trade? Do they just waive him to clear more cap space? They can go a lot of avenues there. Could they use him in a sign-in trade for something bigger with Brandon Ingram? Like, there's a lot of different kind of funny things they could do. Again, just a lot of optionality, a lot of creativity. Daryl Morey, could use this offseason. Well,
and the Melton thing, somebody brought this up the other day about, because I was talking about how Derek White is like a guy the Sixers just have not been able to get. That fourth, fifth guy who just is not afraid of the moment, like he's not the best, but when the other guys are struggling, he's not afraid of the moment. Was Melton supposed to be like that kind of guy, like that? Hey, I can score 14, not every night. You don't need me, but when someone, we've never seen him really healthy. Did he fill the role that they went out and got him for? Probably not. He looked at times like he was there, but I don't know that they can count on him.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was a really effective player when he was healthy, but like to your point, he just really, that back, it's 2 years in a row that back injury really creeped up on him, and it was clearly hindering him, and his effectiveness. So, again, he's another guy. I put him kind of in the same category as Oubre. Like, I think they would like to have DeAnthony Melton back. It's going to depend on what his market is. Does someone maybe throw it like maybe a team like Orlando could make some sense because they could use his shooting, and maybe you talk about balloon deals for the Sixers. Maybe they throw a balloon deal at him for like 1 year, $15 to $20 million, and that probably puts him out of the Sixers range. If he kind of goes around the market and doesn't see what he likes, maybe he circles back with the Sixers and kind of gets a 1 year prove it deal, and he can test free agency again if he can be healthy. So maybe he can make sense there. For the Sixers, I think he'd be a great fit. But I think the guy, Mike, when you talk about that Derek White type of guy, I think Kentavious Pope is the name I brought up before. I think that's the kind of guy who can do that. He's over 40% from three. He has some creation chops. Not a guy you want to have a huge role in that department, but he can do it, especially if other guys are having off nights. Defends at a very high level. So I think that's more the guy. But I think, for sure, I think Melton can do some of those things. When he's healthy, he's a high level, high volume shooter. He can create off the dribble as like a secondary playmaker. He's an impactful defender, gets a lot of steals, gets his hands in the passing lanes a lot, pretty good on ball defender. So he can do a little bit of that. But again, his market, I think I'm just, again, very curious to see what anyone's going to throw him, and if that leads to him circling back with the Sixers.
Paul Hudrick from Liberty Ballers, and of course, the offseason could be here before we know it. The NBA Finals could be finishing up here as soon as tonight. If Boston wins, you can sign your free agent starting tomorrow. Free agency begins right after the draft. The draft is a 2-day event. It's June 26th. And the 27th, like 4:00 in the afternoon for the second round of the NBA draft. And of course, we'll have more on the Sixers in the offseason. Paul Hudrick, everybody. Liberty Ballers at Paul Hudrick. Thank you, buddy.
You got it, Mike.
All right, there you go. Paul Hudrick, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Great segment with Paul. I know. Sixers are down on everyone's list right now. But the offseason, with a lot of assets and the ability to make a lot of changes, could change all that. It's Mike Gill. Whether you're a contractor or do-it-yourself, Progressive Fence and Railing has the region's largest selection of glass rail, cable rail, aluminum, composite, vinyl, with delivery to your home or job site on time and on budget. Or let the pros at Progressive install it for you. They'll help plan your project and get what you need when you need it. Visit ProgressiveFenceandRail.com or one of their 4 locations. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
It's this with Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
You know, there's been a lot of noise around our network the last few months. And I just want to say, I've talked to all the other networks, but I ain't going nowhere other than TNT. But I have made the decision myself. No matter what happens, next year is going to be my last year on television.
Charles Barkley announcing he will retire at the end of next basketball season. Really? Is he really going to retire at the end of next basketball season? We all know the TNT could be their last year, and inside the NBA could be going away. So maybe Charles just get out in front of it and say, you know what? I don't want to be recruited. I don't want to change networks. I'll do next year for Inside the NBA, and then the crew will go away.
It's kind of what he led on, the other part of what he said, Mike. We'll play in a moment. But, you know, to me, listening multiple times now to Barkley over the last few days, I mean, I've heard that replayed a few times. He genuinely sounds like when he says this in his explanation that he's pretty much done.
I just want to say thank you to my NBA family. You guys been great to me. My heart is full with joy and gratitude. But I'm going to pass the baton at the end of next year. I hope the NBA stays with TNT. But for me personally, I wanted you guys to hear from me because I'm not doing any more interviews. Don't y'all be calling me. Nobody calling me. I'm not talking about this again, but I want to tell my NBA and NBA TV and TNT family that I'm not going to another network. But I'm going to pass the baton to either Jamal Crawford or Vince Carter or you, Steve. But next year, I'm going to just retire after 25 years. And I just want to say thank you. And I wanted y'all to hear from me first.
All right. Do we believe him?
I think he's sincere because, you know, Barkley has kind of batted around the idea if he wanted to retire around 60 years old anyway. So why not go out on his own terms? He's basically saying, look, I know I'm going to have one more year of inside the NBA. He's controlling his own narrative, and it's very Chuck, right? It's very Barkley to say, I'm going to go and leave when I want to go. That when you tell me to leave.
Hey, listen, Barkley has hinted at retiring before.
Right.
And here he is. I mean, he is to the point where it's 25 years. It's a round number. If TNT goes away and doesn't get the NBA.
Are you saying the round mound of rebound likes round numbers?
Could be. But he's going to have offers. He can go wherever he wants, but he might not want to start meshing with a new team. What happens to Kenny and Shaq and Ernie's not going to go. He might just say, you know what? The heck with this. I don't need this anymore. I'm just going to do one more year, the three of us together, and then I go away. It makes sense. But there's a lot of people that think this is him, his way of trying to get like a last-ditch effort to get the NBA to say, oh, we don't want Charles and that team to go away. We need inside the NBA, and maybe go back to the table and try to come up with a fourth package for the NBA.
I mean, it's an interesting theory. I don't see Barkley as the kind of guy that can be easily manipulated. I mean, he's literally been on record ripping the executives at Turner and Discovery, Time Warner. I mean, he has not been shy about speaking his mind on this issue. So, and the fact that nothing has happened up to this point, like we haven't heard like, oh man, here comes Turner Sports with a counteroffer, Mike. Like we haven't heard that. So who am I to think that that's ever going to happen at this point?
I don't know, but I know this. the NBA losing that show, it would be a loss. I mean, that is a very popular entity for fans, and to lose that, it's a black mark. To lose that whole the inside the NBA crew, to lose that, I think people, a lot of people don't watch pregame, postgames, all that stuff, but people do watch that show.
Right, people watch that show, and to part of that point, Mike, if I can just dovetail this into it, the second lowest Game 4 of all time happened this weekend. That game only drew 9.62 million viewers when the Mavs destroyed the Celtics on Friday night. This has not been a great viewership NBA Finals, and I'm not saying it's because of the NBA Countdown crew, but you have to wonder if your pre- and post-game had the Inside the NBA crew, how that might impact.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like going to drive the ratings for the games up.
I mean, was this matchup always doomed?
Yeah, the series is just not. I mean, Dallas is just not a basketball market. I know they have two big stars, but this just was not a sexy matchup. For whatever reason, Dallas is not a national team like they are for football, oddly.
Right.
It's weird that the Cowboys fans are not also Mavericks fans. How is that possible?
Shocking.
Yeah, right. But yeah, just nobody cares really about the Mavericks, and it just, and then it didn't help that you had two blowouts, and then Boston wins the third game, so the fourth game was obviously going to lose interest.
I mean, I don't know if you saw the joke, but the Kelceys had joked on their podcast about how all the Maverick fans in Dallas actually go to the game. They're not at home to watch the game.
Yeah, well, it doesn't, so that's why the ratings are so down. Yeah, I mean, now I know some Celtics fans, if they end up losing tonight, that there's some people that are like all concerned, but I think this series is over. I think Boston waxes them tonight, and it's probably done.
Yeah, that's what it certainly looks like. But Barkley, where does he land in your pantheon, Mike, of great sports broadcast analysts?
He's probably, what's funny is Barkley never won a championship. He has that kind of, and all these other guys, but he's probably the most notable of that group. I mean, when you think about great studio analysts, Charles Barkley is probably one of the most impactful, recognizable in any sport. I did hear Jimmy Traina on his podcast suggest that Barkley can really wipe the slate clean and become the next analyst with Mike Breen. Like ESPN should hire him to be a game analyst because JJ Redick, if he leaves, they're going to need another analyst.
Yeah, but Barkley already complains about work. He doesn't like traveling. He always complains about it.
Traina's basically said he can mail it in the regular season. He only has to do the really big games. Right. They don't need him to do every game and then be there for the playoffs. Essentially be the playoffs and the NBA finals because they're on ABC.
So it wouldn't be a full schedule. It would just he'd be specific games at events.
Yeah, maybe
just the Christmas
Day games, one big game here and big game there. He's not doing a full schedule worth of games. And look, they don't have the A team rocking the whole season with Mike Breen.
True. Mike, another story I wanted to hit on with you here for the big three is we didn't get to talk about it too much earlier, but we touched on it a little bit. The All-Star voting is out, and the news came out today that Mookie Betts, he's on the injured list. The reports are he does not need surgery on his broken left hand, but he's out for an indefinite amount of time, opening the door for the returning Trey Turner to slide right in. And as of right now, the Phillies could have three starters for the MLB All-Star Game. Bryce Harper, who leads all National League voting, Alec Boehm, who is third in the voting, and then Trey Turner, who's right behind Mookie Betts at shortstop. What are your thoughts on the three potential Phillies starters in the All-Star Game?
I wouldn't be surprised at all if all three of them go. And the question would be, who would be the starting pitcher? I mean, I guess Ranger Suarez right now is having the best year of the three.
He has the best ERA.
Yeah, he has definitely been the guy who would be, when you want to put the gaudy numbers up on the screen for the All-Star Game, Suarez's would be the best. I mean, he's 10-1 with that, ERA.
And the whip is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the other guys, if you're a traditional baseball fan, the win-loss number is something that jumps off a page at somebody. His win-loss at this stage, I mean, we still have about another month or about a month until he's 10-1. I mean, Nola's 8-3, Wheeler's 8-4, and maybe that changes, but 10-1 is still something, and his ERA is under 2, Suarez. So right now, he would be the starter. The other two would make the team. I know Strahm gave up that home run the other night. He broke a scoreless streak of 27 innings. But I think he deserves to make the All-Star team, too. You saw Harper. He's going to make the team. Bohm is definitively making the team.
Yep.
So you're up to about 7 guys now. It's going to be like that year the Royals. The whole starting team was the Royals.
I mean, it's happened a few times. The Braves, the one year, the Mariners, the year they had the 118 wins. So, you listen, the Phillies are the best team in the National League. It shouldn't be a surprise they have a ton of guys in
the Bohm thing, though, I mean, he's got over 1 million votes. He's got more votes than Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
I mean, if you told me pick the guy who has the third most the third most votes in the National League, or the
he
second,
has the third most votes in the National League.
I could have had 100 guesses before I got to Bohm.
You would have never thought he'd be ahead of Ohtani.
No, I wouldn't think he's over anybody. I mean, Bohm is like, I think people like Bohm, but I don't think he's like, put it this way, I think people like Stott more. I'm surprised he has more votes than Stott.
It's such a strange thing with this voting because, like, I always want to know who these people are. You know what I mean? Like, who are the people who are like, I'm going to vote for Alec Bohm and Brandon Marsh, but not Kyle Schwarber. You know what I mean?
I remember the days where you would go to the game and they would literally pass down the row of the ballots, and you had to get a pencil and you would like pop the hole out, and then you'd have to turn them back in.
Hand them back in, yeah. Now everything's online.
Yep.
Like everything else. Hey, Mike, I don't know if you saw, but NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell had to take the stand today in the ongoing trial about the Sunday ticket lawsuit. Roger Goodell took the stand, and basically he says the NFL's position is that the NFL Sunday ticket is a premium product. It is not something meant for general audience consumption. For those who don't know, the class action suit involves 2.4 million subscribers and 48,000 businesses that say they paid for the package, but the league broke antitrust lawsuits by moving its package off of the satellite and onto YouTube TV, and that the NFL is restricting who can actually subscribe to the package by saying it was originally only on Dish and now on YouTube TV. There's a potential of a $7 billion in damages that are being sought in this lawsuit. So, Mike, is Roger Goodell correct? Is this a premium product that they have every right to offer to exclusive, outlets?
I would think so. Like, you're saying we have national TV partners. You're getting that for free.
Right. If
you don't like that offering, we have a premium product for you that you can pay for. Like, I don't like to side with the NFL or the corporation in this deal, but and believe me, I would like the price to be lower and it to be like by team. Like, when I lived in Morgantown, I had to go to every Sunday. We had to go to the sports bar to watch the game, the Eagles game. I mean, unless they were playing like a Monday night game or whatever, like we had to go to Kegler's. We went to Kegler's. Any WVU fans, alum out in the audience, you've been to Kegler's. We had to go to Kegler's or Sports Page to go watch the Eagles game because we weren't paying for that premium product. But I think it seems to make sense that would be a premium product.
I mean, I think so, but apparently there are all these people who are trying to say basically the league is trying to manipulate antitrust laws and control where the product can be bought, and that where the platforms like DirecTV and YouTube TV are charging too much money.
I think they're charging too much money. That I can agree with, but I think they're well within their right.
So you say there's a little bit of both going on here. They have the right to charge you. They have the right for this product. But, maybe the price should be a little more reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they could say, like, hey, we think this price is too much. You don't have, that's what they're saying. You don't have to buy it, I don't know.
Mike, before we get out of here, I want to ask you, because over the weekend, Friday night, the Mavericks crushed the Celtics Saturday night, the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals crushed the Panthers. Both those teams coming back home. I have a bet I want to ask you about, Mike. So I double-checked DraftKings Sportsbook. If you were to parlay both the Celtics to win at home tonight and the Panthers to win at home tomorrow night, the odds are plus 143. Does Mike Gill have enough faith that these two series will be over to place a bet that both of them will end the next two nights?
Well, I think Boston wins tonight, and I think that'll be over. And the hockey?
Hockey's tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think Florida wins tomorrow. I did watch the game on Saturday. Edmonton dominates. That's what happens. You win the blowout, and then you come out flat. So Edmonton loses tomorrow. Celtics win tonight.
So you'll take that plus 143 bet?
I would. Yep.
How much would you throw on it?
I don't know. $100.
Oh, wow.
I feel pretty good.
Oh, you feel that good about it?
There we go.
You feel 100% good.
Summertime, I'm feeling a little frisky.
All right.
Yep.
Mike, that's your big three for today.
There we go.
Well, more than three, but still.
Yeah, that's all right. All right, we're getting ready to get out of here. Everybody Wang Chung tonight. Put that bet down. Phil's tonight, we gave you the lineup. Phil's reinstated shortstop Trey Turner earlier today. Johan Rojas goes to the minors. He is now at AAA. To make room for him on the 26-man roster, Rojas option to AAA Lehigh Valley. All right, final thoughts coming up next here on the Sports Bash.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, get ready to get out of here on this Monday night. We're back on a Monday, and it's been busy. Trey Turner is back. Johan Rojas is out. He is demoted down to AAA. And you wonder, is it a demotion for Johan Rojas? Listen, the Phillies made the decision at the start of the season to send Dahl to AAA and keep Rojas. They gave Rojas the opportunity to win this job, and he didn't grab it. Therefore, Dahl is still here, and Rojas is back. Now, if Dahl just stinks it up over the next couple of weeks, because he's going to play a lot as a left-handed bat. Whenever the Phillies face a right-handed pitcher, most likely you're going to see a lot of Dahl in the lineup. Now, if Dahl doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, we could see Rojas back. He goes to center. Marsh goes back to left. And we go back to the original beginning of the season setup. But I think the Phillies are looking for bigger and better. Edmundo Sosa took some flies in the outfield today, as did Kyle Schwarber. So we'll see what the Phillies do. But that's the news today. Turner is back. He's in the 2-hole for the Phils as they take on the Padres tonight. Johan Rojas, option to AAA Lehigh. That's it for me. Josh has game night. Justin Figueroa, local boxer, former Holy Spirit football player. He's going to talk about his next match that is coming to AC. That's coming up tonight. Also tomorrow, Frank's back with the mailbag. He was down in Baltimore this weekend, so we'll get some perspective on that. Phil's tonight. Eagles training camp announced July 23rd. We'll have more tomorrow during football at 4. Paul Hudrick, thanks to him. Jeff Mosher, Bob Wankel, Mike McGarry. Great show today. Whew, boy. We're back tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.